Disclosures at raymondjames.com. This is NPR.
The Supreme Court ruled that more than 330,000 Haitians living here legally under the Temporary Protected Status Program can lose their protection and be forced to leave. The country they'd be sent back to is currently roiled by violence, political turmoil, and extreme poverty. What happens now, here and in Haiti? Next time on 1A.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Morningside Music Bridge, returning to Boston. The summer program shines a spotlight on young classical musicians from around the world, with concerts July 12th through August 7th at New England Conservatory. mmb.international.
Using dramatic reconstruction, declassified astronaut audio, and film archive, join Apollo 11 on its historic journey to the moon. Don't miss 8 days to the moon and back.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on BPR and GBH and NEPM, live from the library. Another day and new sexual assault allegations against Maine Senate hopeful Graham Plattner. This one's about rape. Should he drop out or keep going and fight for a Democratic Senate majority? Plus, should the "but then there's Trump" defense be used? Call or text. Then it's CNN's John King and the political fallout from everything, and sports authority Trenni Casey on the U.S. men's soccer team's spectacular loss.
I'm Marjorie Egan. In the second hour, it's the ACLU's Carol Rose on what the latest Supreme Court decisions mean for voting rights and trans athletes. Then we bring you an exclusive interview with the reflecting pool algae. We'll end the show with vacation and our technology addictions. When you take time off this summer, will you totally unplug or frantically watch CNN like Jim? Unplugged travel is what we all need. Call or text next. BPR live from the Boston Public Library.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Plattner's accuser, Nir Eisikovits, says on the night when the alleged assault occurred, she had asked Plattner not to come to her house.
I heard a noise outside my door, and then he came in. He just came into my house. It was unlocked. I live in an area where you don't usually have to lock your doors. I do now. So he came in, and I realized, okay, he didn't listen. He's in my home.
Eisikovits spoke to CNN's Jake Tapper. Several Democrats have withdrawn their endorsements, including top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer. Plattner says he is considering what his next step should be. President Trump at this hour is in Ankara, Turkey, for a NATO summit. A top focus among the allies will continue to be the war between Russia and Ukraine. As the week began, a Russian missile and drone attack on Kyiv and the surrounding region left almost 24 people dead. Ukraine's military today is saying that overnight it hit 2 manufacturing sites critical to Russia's military campaign. President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky are slated to meet on the sidelines of the summit tomorrow. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalshi says defense issues, especially Ukraine, are on the agenda this week.
The administration just announced a 6-month Pentagon review of U.S. forces in Europe. So this week, the main issues will include increasing defense spending, investing in military capabilities, and there's going to be a focus on sustaining support for Ukraine to keep deterring Russia.
NPR's Hadil Al-Shalshi. 2 explosions rocked Syria's capital, Damascus, this morning, injuring 18 people, according to Syrian officials. The bombs went off near the hotel where French President Emmanuel Macron held morning meetings on his official visit to Syria. He'll be traveling on to the NATO summit. Prince Harry has lost a privacy lawsuit against a British tabloid newspaper. He'd sued the publisher of the Daily Mail newspaper over claims of unlawful information gathering. NPR's Fatima Al-Qassab reports.
The verdict came as Prince Harry, who is King Charles's younger son, began a week-long visit to his home country. Harry, along with other high-profile claimants including Elton John, had accused the publisher of the Daily Mail newspaper of privacy invasions, including bugging phone lines and obtaining personal health records. Earlier this year, he gave emotional testimony in the trial, saying the press intrusion had made his wife Meghan's life an absolute misery. Today, a judge in London ruled against the prince, saying the allegations required more evidence to be proven. The publishers of the Daily Mail called the ruling a magnificent vindication of their journalism. Fatima Al-Qassab, NPR News.
This is NPR.
Morning with the latest from the GBH newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. A lawsuit alleging Worcester police committed misconduct during the protests following the death of George Floyd back in June 1st of 2020 has been dismissed. The Telegram and Gazette reports a federal judge dismissed the lawsuit yesterday, noting that the case had been resolved. However, city spokesperson Thomas Matthews says the two sides were still working to finalize paperwork on the settlement, which won't be official until it is signed. The judge's order notes that either side can petition to reopen the case if a resolution is not consummated within 60 days. And a bill that's making its way through the Massachusetts legislature would let the state use eminent domain to seize the long-vacant Norwood Hospital property. The State House News Service reports supporters see it as a step toward opening the hospital back up some 6 years after it first closed due to a major and catastrophic flood. Construction at the site to build a new hospital stopped in 2024, right in the middle of the Steward Healthcare bankruptcy fiasco. And Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux says the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's Boston office is trying to intimidate his office into complying with a detainer request. Mass Live reports that ICE Boston posted on X criticizing the Bristol House of Correction for releasing a man who was in the custody in the country illegally and with pending firearm charges instead of holding him on a detainer. Heroux said his office acted in line with the law. 67 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Schwab, offering the Schwab Teen Investor Account, where teens can gain hands-on investing experience. It's co-owned by parents and teens, so parents can monitor the account while teens learn how to invest. More at schwab.com. This is NPR.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you. At 12:30 or so, very special, Jim, we are going to be joined live here at the Boston Public Library by the algae from the D.C. reflecting pool.
By the way, I've spoken to a bunch of friends about it. Most of them think this is a career ender for you and me. So just tread carefully when we actually do this.
We're hoping for the best.
We're hoping for the best, exactly.
Okay, tomorrow at noon, the mayor of Boston will join us for July's edition of Ask the Mayor. Michelle will be with us here at the library from noon to 1. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. So, and perhaps the least surprising development of the 2026 midterms so far, Graham Plattner has been credibly accused of sexual assault again, this time rape. He repeatedly told the media, the public, his supporters that no other scandal would emerge after the news broke about him sexting women outside his marriage and after the New York Times published multiple accounts of women who dated him describing his behavior as unsettling. But now, as you all know, Jenny Rascott has recounted in excruciating detail how he drunkenly pushed himself on her despite her repeated requests for him to stop, and only now and raped her, and only now are people starting to demand, people meaning high-ranking Democrats, including the main Democratic Party, Elizabeth Warren, are essentially virtually every leading Democrat. Bernie Sanders is not. Ed Markey has also said he should drop out. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. What do you make of the latest? Do you think he should step aside before the July 13th deadline? That's the deadline, next Monday, by which time, if he drops out, the main Democratic Party has 2 weeks to pick a replacement. Many prominent Democrats, as I say He should drop out, but obviously the same rules don't apply to Trump, to Hegseth, to RFK Jr., to Elon Musk. What behavior is acceptable to turn a blind eye to in the effort to protect the Supreme Court, or at least to make sure the Supreme Court is not made horrible for many more years to come, and to defeat Trump's agenda? The number is 877-301-8970. One of the very few people who's high profile who has said he should stay in, Marjorie, is a guy from Maine, Stephen King. He tweeted this morning, Graham Plattner may drop out. I hope he doesn't. But meanwhile, the abuser-in-chief just keeps on keeping on. And in a subsequent Twitter post, King added, tell you what, if you knew the whole truth about everyone in the Senate and House of Representatives, those chambers would be dead empty. Jesus said, let him without sin cast the first stone. Boy, that is really a hell of a statement from Stephen King, in light of the fact that there are very few people who doubt the credibility of Rascott. So in any case, 877-301-8970.
Well, this combined to be a big mess on many fronts. At the beginning, it was leadership of the Democratic Party thinking that Janet Mills was the person to put in this race, and Schumer not seeming to realize, and Hakeem Jeffries, for that matter, because they kind of goofed on Mondami as well. New York voters wanted someone who's going to be tough against Trump, wanted somebody who had more, so-called radical policies. I don't think child care is a radical policy, or housing is a radical policy, but they misread that. Janet Mills went down in flames. I think a lot of it, we're reading now, is that the people that saw him as kind of a central casting kind of guy, that's one of Trump's big things. He loves central casting people. I guess there was this video that people loved of him shucking oysters and chopping wood and swinging kettleballs around and speaking with his great baritone to the camera. He fit that central casting thing, and there were political operatives that got swayed by that and didn't vet him, or didn't vet him sufficiently. There was talk about how one of his campaign people did not want to spend $20,000 for a thorough vetting, so kind of did the fast vetting thing, and obviously there was a lot more there. But the bottom line of this whole thing, I mean, he was shaky from the start. I mean, we talked about him before the primary with these stories about the women and the Nazi tattoo, etc. But the issue was, are you going to have a Supreme Court that can continue on? Trump could appoint two more Alitos and Thomases that are 40 years old.
If they step down.
Yes, if the Democrats
so
don't
let
run
me
the
interrupt
Senate.
you and ask you a question.
What?
A poll comes out tomorrow. You now think that Plattner should drop out, correct?
I think he can't win.
Okay, the poll comes out tomorrow that shows Plattner beats Collins by 5 points. No other Maine Democrat can beat Collins. What's your position tomorrow?
Well, I mean, it's real tough to say that a guy that
so what's your position tomorrow?
That I couldn't vote for him if I was in Maine, and I don't think he should. I mean, I think the guy should have the decency at this point not to run. But
despite all this crap, while he had a significant lead over Collins a month ago, he still has a lead of 2 points. Now, it's not huge, but it is a lead nevertheless. There's no other. Janet Mills was doing okay against Collins, but didn't excite the voters. But isn't that real? I assume that's the calculation that a lot of people continue to make, other than the Democrats who are running away for fear that they'll be tarnished by his unacceptable behavior as well, no?
Well, I guess we have to count on other states picking up Maine's slack. I mean, Maine was the most likely place.
I think, and we'll ask John King in about 30 minutes, I don't think there is a way, if the Democrats lose Maine, by the way, I should be clear, I think he has to drop out too, and he should drop out. However, I have not seen a roadmap, and we'll again ask John, that would allow the Democrats to take control of the Senate. They have to win 4 seats and keep all the seats they currently have. Without Maine being one of the states that's flipped.
Here's the thing that you're facing. You're facing a Supreme Court that's very radical to the right now, right? Look what they've done on voting rights. Look what they've done on trans athletes. Look what they've done on allowing the president to get away with whatever he wants to get away with. So Donald Trump could push the Alito and Thomas to retire, and put in two 40-year-old right-wing lunatics, and then that would be the United States of America for the next 40 years.
Okay, so do you stay with Plattner? That's my...
Well, I think you can't at this point.
But
it's really upsetting because when you look at what's could happen to this country with two more nut Supreme Court justices, and that's what we're looking at.
For 50 years. By the way, what happened if the New York Times, we'll get to your calls in a second, what happened if the New York Times story came out, I think guessing it was about a month ago, was a lot of Democrats were saying, well, one of the women accused him of the worst stuff is a conservative, she has an agenda, etc. Russ Scott yesterday in this interview with CNN's Jake Tapper made it clear that that's not who she is. Here's part of what she had to say in this very long interview.
I understand. I understand that the state of our political environment is so much so that we need a lot of change. And he's offering that change. And, I'm not mad at anyone who has voted for him all along. If he wasn't who he was, I would be voting for him as well. And going forward, I don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, it's pretty incredible, by the way. And for those who have not followed the story closely, don't spend time calling saying she's making this up. They're not only is she credible, there were texts and other communications with people that were simultaneously shortly after the alleged rape, which well before he was a candidate, by the way, 5 years ago, that suggests that she is telling nothing but the truth.
Here's a good text. Can't we get a candidate who isn't too old and too rapey, says one of our texters. I'll say this for the Democrats. The Democrats are much tougher on their candidates who do make them leave. We have sexual abusers all over the place. Obviously, Clarence Thomas, I think Anita Hill's every word of what she said was true. Clarence Thomas is on the Supreme Court. Robert Kennedy accused of all sorts of things involving women, including going after one of the babysitters at his house and keeping score of these women. Donald Trump, credibly, found liable by a jury of sexual assault against Eugene E. Carroll and then defaming her. I mean, you got Lutnick that was down at Epstein's Island. I mean, the Republicans don't make these people, and not to mention Pete Hegseth, whose wife at the time was hiding in the closet to get away from him and has been accused of all sorts of terrible things involving sexual
So where does that
stuff.
go? I mean, I agree with every word you said. Where do you end up with that they play by a different set of rules?
Yeah, they do.
So they win more than the Democrats do because they tolerate sexual abuse and rape and other kinds of, including rape and other kinds of things. So is the end of that sentence, if the Democrats are going to compete, they have to play by the same rules or they're never going to be able to have power again? I mean, by the way, I'm not directing this at you. You happen to be standing here. I mean, these are the issue. Let me just say this. Despite the fact, I'm not casting aspersions on any Democrat who abandoned Plattner yesterday. If the most recent poll had him up 7 points as opposed to just 2 points, which is within the margin of error, I would bet that fewer Democrats would have left him. We have a ton of calls, so let's take them. 877-301-8970.
Laura in Cohasset, thank you for calling.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. It's a really complicated issue, and personally, I had, as a survivor of sexual assault, I spent weeks before the Kavanaugh confirmation and specifically told my story in Susan Collins's office while she hid behind her inner sanctum and wouldn't even listen. And she pretended to believe that Kavanaugh wouldn't overturn Roe. So I would argue that she has done more to harm women in this country than one man could ever do. I can feel the pain of this woman, and I believe her from start to finish. But when it comes down to between a man who does things that are so rampant in this country that people have no idea because we don't talk about it. And this woman who has lied from the beginning of her term limiting running for office 20 years later, and then again brought us to losing Roe versus Wade. I would have to vote for him.
Laura, that is a really courageous call. Thank you for sharing your story and calling us. We appreciate it.
And, she brings up a great point. I mean, what could a Supreme Court that gets any further nutty and righter do to the entire country?
Well, can I tell you, I thought Laura makes
next
a very
is getting rid of mifepristone, the abortion pills. I mean, who knows what they could do.
But this is not next Tuesday. If it was next Tuesday, it's Graham Plattner or nothing. If Graham Plattner pulls out by next Monday, there is an opportunity, not an opportunity, the Democratic Party of Maine will pick a replacement. He or she may not have the same popularity that Plattner used to have, but it isn't like it's either Plattner or it's Collins. You know what I mean? There's an option for another Democrat. I just don't know. I don't know who any of them are.
Well, somebody's sending me a text about Maine State Senator Troy Jackson, similar to Plattner, but already vetted.
A lot of people are talking about him.
Pretty clear people want someone like that. So maybe that someone like that could step into the breach and beat Susan Collins. I mean, this is all about the Supreme Court to me. It's all about the Supreme Court.
Well, you know, it's also about, though, I'm sure you had the same experience. I got texts from a lot of people yesterday after this thing broke on a lot of different subjects. And I'd say a third of them said, there's a Plattner where I work. There was a Plattner at my prior thing. There was I'm serious.
Listen, we learned during the Me Too moment. Yeah. I mean, 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 women in the United States of America have been sexually abused in some way. That's a lot of women. That's a lot of abusers. So obviously, I mean, Stephen King may have I don't think everybody is a sexual abuser in Congress, but I'm sure quite a few of them are. Let's go to Rachel in Needham. Hi, Rachel.
Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Marjorie. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
I guess I'm a first time, not a long time. I just started watching recently.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you. My son, who's in his mid-30s, turned me on to you.
Oh, great. Thank him.
Yeah. Thank you. So my experience is that I am a survivor of violent sexual assault when I was many years younger than I am. And so I have that experience. And second point is that the Republicans, for lack of a better word, they always find a woman or two to push back on our side and get us Democrats to take the candidate off. So that's suspicious. And then the third thing with Graham Plattner is that he's a vet. And I've dated a vet, and I was married to a vet. And I do believe women when they talk about it because I am a woman and I do, have that experience. But there's a lot of suspicious and concerning timing and all that kind of stuff. So I would I haven't paid too much attention to him. I wasn't really interested in him in the beginning, but I've listened to a bunch of people and I was sort of starting to get a little bit excited about him.
Rachel, would you vote for him based on what you know if you lived in Maine?
Well, with the small amount, I did listen to him talk like at lunchtime, and it was hot a couple of days, last week, and I liked what he said.
Okay.
But I would have to learn more about what he's about. So
understood, Rachel.
I do know people in Maine, but I haven't paid attention.
Well, we really appreciate you sharing your story and making your first call, and thank your son for turning you on to us. Call us again, Rachel. Appreciate your perspective. 877-301-8970.
This is just another case the Democratic Party is shooting itself in the foot, which they are so very good at. We need another party. Democrats just can't get it done, it seems. Also, he should step aside and let someone else run.
Well, I mean, the response to that is the Republicans just are willing to support these kinds of people. I mean, as you said before, that's one of the solutions, not a third party, but a Democratic Party that says rapists are fine if we think they can win an election. I mean, it's really hard to live with yourself. And again, I hate to be practical in the middle of this discussion, but there is an opportunity to pick somebody else. Maybe that person won't have the charisma that Plattner had, but they can field another candidate.
One of our texters wants to know if it's too late for Al Franken to move from Minnesota to Maine and become the Democratic candidate.
Does Al Franken seem like the most minor offense in history after Trump and Hegseth? And
He posed for a picture, with his hands over a woman's breast. He was not touching.
I don't think they were right. They weren't even touching.
And then there were other allegations of him putting his arms around people and stuff like that.
And you know who led the charge to get rid of him? Senator Gillibrand.
Yeah.
Senator Gillibrand is now chair of the Democratic caucus to elect senators, and she joined with Schumer yesterday, saying that if Plattner stays in the race, he won't get $1 single, so he can't compete in terms of the ad wars with Susan Collins there.
One of the texters thinks we should recruit Heather Cox Richardson to run.
She lives in Maine.
She lives in Maine. Yeah, I don't think she would want to be doing it, but people.
Why?
Because she is a great historian.
Why don't
and she's
we
got a
email
great
her
Substack.
during the show and ask if she's...
And I don't think she would want to...
Let's email her during the show, Jamie, and ask if she's thinking about it, that a listener suggested that she...
Although she's got a huge following.
Oh, you think so?
Would you want to be a United States Senator when you got going what she's got going on?
Well, I don't know. I'd like to have what she has got going on, and then we can make the decision.
Cheryl Concord in Concord.
Hi, Cheryl.
I think she's one of the most popular, most often read people on Substack.
I think she is, yeah.
And
Cheryl,
so she's got a very good financial
Cheryl
thing
in
going
Concord,
on.
hi.
Hi. I'm a long-time listener. This is the first time I've gotten a call through.
We're glad you did. What's up?
Well, I'm also a rape survivor from a long time ago, and yet I still think that I would vote if I lived in Maine, because I feel like the Democrats, like with Al Franken, I mean, it's like play by the rules, and they don't. And so maybe we need somebody that doesn't play by the rules to be tough enough to stand up to them. Maybe we need somebody that, The other thing I think is that he is a veteran, and he has been through. I mean, he says he's turning over a leaf, and maybe we need to give him a chance.
We hear you, Cheryl. Another amazing call. Thank you. I'm really glad you got through. We appreciate it.
Okay, let's go to
3 sexual abuse survivors with the perspective they've shared. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it speaks to your issue about the importance of not having a Supreme Court captured by people like this for the rest of our children's lives.
It seems almost insane to say this. When you weigh this guy accused of all these things, including being accused of rape, running for office in Maine, and then you put that next to what could happen under a person that I think has lost his marbles and is also a sexual abuser, and has been accused by like 24 women now of untoward sexual advances. Trump, and being corrupt and being a liar and all these terrible things. What he could do to this country for the next, to 40 years, 50 years. It's a tough one, but I don't think he can win. To me, I don't think he can win now.
I think you have to first make the decision as a matter of principle if you can do it, and then get to that. But I think the reverse is how people are making a calculation. And if I was living in Maine, I might be doing the same thing. I don't know.
We've got time for just one more. Catherine in Franklin, thank you for calling.
Hey, Catherine.
Yes, thank you. I just think that it's time somebody took the moral high road and stopped voting for sexual predators. I appreciate that the Supreme Court is at play, but there's lots of other intervening events that could change the possibility of putting someone on the Supreme Court. And right now, I think that, as I said, we just keep lowering the bar and going lower instead of going higher. And I think it's time to go higher.
Can I tell you, Catherine, I am where you are, even though I am totally aware of the dangers.
But you know something we should think about?
Yeah,
This Supreme Court as horrific as it could be under him, could force women who are the survivors of rape and pregnant to have those babies.
That's true.
That's what the Supreme Court of the United States could do, and I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, can I just say, before Casey in Yarmouth, Maine, this reminds me when Biden pulled out in 24. If Plattner pulls out, sounds like the party picks the candidate, not the residents of Maine. Not a good look, in my honest opinion. We should consider, we'll let you know in a few minutes, our final discussion with listeners today. Maybe we should return to this because there seems to be a colossal amount of interest. So we'll let you know.
Okay.
And we're going to discuss it with John King in 20 minutes.
Trenni Casey is up next. We're going to talk about soccer. We're going to talk about Jaylen Brown, a lot of other sports issues. She's going to deliver the latest news on the Celtics on this Jaylen Brown front, of course. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR, GBH, and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Cameron McCloud of the Dallas hip-hop collective Cure for Paranoia joins us after the band's NPR Tiny Desk contest win, bringing rap, funk, and soul to a much bigger audience by way of a famously tiny desk. Plus, Jeffrey Seller, the Tony-winning producer behind Rent, Avenue Q, and Hamilton, joins us with Theater Kid, his memoir about finding his way to theater and shaping modern Broadway. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, committed to simplifying college planning for families over 45 years with trusted guidance, interactive tools, step-by-step videos, and more. MEFA.org. And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank. Brilliantly boring since 1865.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At 12:30 or so today, we're going to be joined by, live right here, by algae from the reflecting pool. Just stick around and you'll see what we mean. Tomorrow noon, the mayor of Boston for July's edition of Ask the Mayor from noon to 1. By the way, Marjorie and I just talked during the break. We are going to return to the Plattner topic, not just with John King in 20 minutes, but at the end of the show, we'll take more of your calls and texts and thoughts about this. We're joined now live at the library by Trenni Casey, anchor and reporter via NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hello, Trenni.
Hi, guys.
So, Trenni, before we start, first three callers we had today were women who were survivors of sexual abuse.
Oh.
Despite that fact, they said, based upon their concerns about the Supreme Court and Stephen King's argument, they didn't say this, that Trump is far worse, and so is the Senate. They could vote for.
I thought one said she'd have to get more information.
Right, that's right. I'm sorry, the third one did.
Oh.
What's your take on this?
I mean, I haven't really liked him from the start. I felt that he's problematic. I have felt that maybe Democrats too often take a high moral ground and they need to lower that ground a little bit. But I thought, when you start, if you have the mindset of if you can't beat them, join them, then aren't we just as bad?
If he doesn't pull out and it's election day and you're in Maine, do you vote for Susan Collins or do you vote for Plattner?
I mean, honestly, I'd probably vote for Susan Collins. I can't rail against the Republicans turning a blind eye to whether it's Trump's history of sexual harassment and abuse, his history of whether it's overt or covert racism, and then be like, oh, this guy with a Nazi tattoo who demeans women and is accused of sexual assault. But that's okay because he thinks the same way I do. To me, that's hypocritical. I understand it, and I understand that we're at a flashpoint where maybe you have to take the good of the country. And I guess I'm also not completely convinced that just because he's saying he will represent the more progressive side of the Democrats that he would. What happens if once he's in office, he does a hard right turn and is no different than Susan Collins or anybody else?
John Fetterman is actually a pretty decent example.
Yeah. I mean, there's just because you run on the Democratic ticket does not mean that you'll do what's in the best interest of the Democrats, especially if you're the type of person who is known for harassing women and being, racist. And like, I know you can grow as a person, but these also, sometimes I feel like we hold people to a standard from when they were really young, like call it teens, early 20s, when your frontal lobe is still, forming and you're trying to figure out who you are. This was a grown man who acted this way. And that's really hard for me to overlook.
Talking to Trenni Casey.
Okay, let us move on from Graham Plattner, which we'll return to with John King, and again at the end of the show, to the Americans and the Belgians last night, and a game that was a lot more about
lopsided.
Well, no, it was just not about soccer, obviously.
Well, I mean, listen. At the end of the day, it was about soccer because all of the controversy was over one side. To me, once the game starts, it starts, right? But I think it did impact how both sides played.
How so?
I think the Belgians played with an intensity and a desire that maybe they might not have if Full Balogun was not out there. I think they felt like FIFA wanted Team USA to advance, so they gave them a competitive advantage. And Belgium, and listen, I'm not going to pretend to know a ton about soccer, so I'm 100% stealing this little tidbit that I just heard on sports radio when I was flipping back and forth, driving in and out. But like, one of the fill-in hosts on the Sports Hub said that this is not the Belgian team from 2022 or 2018. Like, apparently they were pretty good back then. And so it was a beatable team. And you didn't just lose to them. You got absolutely waxed by them. And that, to me, is part of, like, and I also wonder, was there a level of discomfort on the American side that they did, yes, great, we got this great player back, but how we went about getting this player back. I mean, a lot of these guys live in Europe, right? So I don't know if that automatically makes them more progressive, but they may have felt uneasy and uncomfortable with how it all unfolded. And I think that played out last night on the field.
When you say once the game starts, that's in the background kind of thing, and that may be true. Unless
it was hard for me to hear, but I feel like they didn't talk a ton.
Well, I know, but
right?
However, going forward, when this is over, because it's been all positive until Trump got involved in terms of America.
Oh, everything he touches, he ruins.
Well, there's no question. In my opinion, unless Mbappe or Messi scores the winning goal with 30 seconds to go in the final, this World Cup is going to be remembered as the one that Trump tried to fix.
Yep, 100%.
And that's what the United States, well, it's Mexico and Canada too, but the United States' World Cup will be remembered for, which is horrible.
It's horrible because leading up to this point, Jim, what the World Cup had been known for and like what anyone was talking about was the high level of competition.
Despite the corruption of the governing thing,
corruption, like take that out. What was happening in cities and on the field was that people from other nations can come here and they feel welcomed. They are having a good time in the cities that they're visiting. The games have been competitive and exciting. It has been about soccer. I mean, like, one of the biggest stories of the World Cup is the Tartan Army in Scotland coming here into Miami and winning the hearts and minds of all of these people and the money that they've donated. I just saw a story again today that the Tartan Army donated another $15,000 to a local charity. Like, that, it was this feel good. People were feeling so good about, like, you come here and we're not what it seems like from afar. And then what does he do? He picks up the phone, he makes a phone call, and now we look like jerks again.
Two more comments about this, if we can, before we leave this thing. I have to say, I agree, the excitement, I didn't predict this, nor did I think I didn't think it was going to happen. I don't think it's as much about the games, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. It is about the spirit of people rooting for their home country and being here doing it. I watched the whole second half of that game last night.
Oh, good for
you. And I know I'm going to alienate a lot of people, but the truth is the truth. That was the dullest 45 minutes of my life. I'm not talking about the Belgians. I'm talking about the United States.
Oh, my God.
They crossed, what is it called? The
midfield.
Midfield. They do the exact same thing every time. The only time in 40 minutes when they had a chance, it was a beautiful pass to a guy who had run beyond the defense, and he misses the ball and it goes out of bounds. the dullest crap I've ever seen.
It was very
in my life.
boring. I mean, like to me, even a 1-0 match, if there is a lot of attacking and good defense and stuff, like that is fine. But no, this was so I did the opposite of you. I watched the entire first half. And then they were down
3-1 at the half, weren't they?
Were they down 2-1 or 3-1? No, they were down 2-1 at the half.
They were, okay.
I'm pretty sure they were down 2-1 at the half. And I was like, okay, I'm going to brush my teeth and go upstairs. And as I was brushing my teeth, the way that I have my my phone set up, The Athletic will be like on my screen at all times. And I saw it pop up that it was 3-1. I was like, well, I'm just going to go to bed. Like, they're not coming back from this. This is terrible. So I had to go back and watch and that was just like a JV mistake. What Matt Freese did.
Oh my God.
Horrible play. Like everybody seemed out of sorts last night. And I guess I started this by saying, once the game started, it didn't matter. But I do wonder if they were out of sorts because they knew, like my husband was walking our dogs when Belgium scored their third goal, and we live in the like North End waterfront area, and so right across is East Boston, Chelsea. He said he could hear cheers erupting for Belgium on the other side of the harbor.
So my last
thing. I think people turned on Team USA.
Okay, my last.
Isn't that horrible?
Horrible because it's not their fault.
No, it's not their fault, and I think you're right that it probably played games with their psyche.
I 100% think it did. I don't think it helped him. I think it hurt him in the end.
One hypothetical, and then I promise no more questions about the World Cup. Every time there's an Olympics where the United States team does great, or in this case, the World Cup comes to Canada, Mexico, the United States, the conversation is this what finally does it? Is this what finally, and obviously I'm talking about, does soccer become one of the 5 major sports in America?
No, I don't. I mean, listen, I think for a certain sect of the population, it is already considered in their minds, it surpasses hockey. Like I think it's football, baseball, basketball, and then hockey and soccer are kind of like in this. If you're a hockey person, you're a hockey person. You're a soccer person, you're a soccer person. I think until the United States has sustained success in both the men's and women's game, and let's be honest, it's probably more so on the men's side, and the MLS becomes a true top-tier league where it's not where you go at the end of your career because some team will throw a bunch of money at you like Miami did for Messi to fill their stadium, but you actually choose to play in MLS because that is such a high level and a high standard of play, and you don't choose to go over to Europe to play, then no, I don't. I think it could be generations. I do wonder, though, like a lot of my friends who have kids, and like my sister, my niece plays soccer, my nephew plays soccer. I know a lot of people who don't want their kids playing football, and so if they stay in soccer longer, like last night we were watching the game, and this woman we were watching it with is like, why don't we have better players? Like Belgium's such a small country. Why do their players seem so much better than ours? And I said, because there, all of your best top-tier athletes go into soccer. That's where everybody plays it. Here, your best top-tier athletes play football, they play lacrosse, they play basketball. Like there's so many other sports and ways that you can make, especially with NIL, that you can make money now.
Yeah.
That I don't think at least our best male athletes. I think a lot of our best female athletes play soccer, but I don't think our best male athletes play soccer.
You mentioned your niece. You know what I haven't asked you? Your youngest daughter was a hugely...
They're all huge into soccer.
But she was a great soccer player.
We had a bunch of kids down for 4th of July, and they took the television outside, and they spent the whole weekend watching
So
soccer
she totally into the World Cup?
My son drove into New York City to watch the game last night. I think that I think the kids grew up playing soccer, especially the kids that are in their 20s and 30s now, will have changed that because a lot of people don't want their kids to play football.
That's my point. Like I think that generation is going to start to like filter. So listen. I didn't grow up.
I was too busy doing the laundry and cooking.
Oh, poor Marjorie.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say I didn't grow up playing soccer or anything like that, but I've been obsessed with the World Cup. I've watched. It doesn't need to be Team USA. I've watched every time I sit down at my desk. I put the World Cup on my computer. It's been really fun.
Yeah,
I
did watch some of the games. And what'd you think? Because these guys are incredible athletes. They're going up and down that big, huge field, back and forth, back and forth. The basketball court is a little tiny thing compared to this thing.
But all that said, when this is over, I'm not going to be like, sweet, I'm getting up at 6 a.m. and watching the Premier League. Like, I'm just going to go back to my regular scheduled programming of, it's our football season that starts now.
Okay, so the Celtics and Jaylen Brown.
Are you sad about this?
Yes.
Why?
Yes. Well, because I think he's a great player. I think he's a great guy. I love the fact that he was doing all these things for the community. He had those classes at MIT. I mean, I just
spent a lot of money on Black Enterprise stuff here. Shirley's written about
it. That's
right.
Done... So I think I wanted him here in Boston. I wanted him here with Tatum, and he's gone now.
As a social activist, I would have loved to keep him in Boston forever, and I'm hoping that just because he doesn't play here anymore doesn't mean that he won't still contribute to the community. He did spend the first 10 years of his career. He became, for all intents and purposes, became, quote unquote, a man here, right? Came here in his early 20s, is leaving at age 29. No, he must come here at 19 because he's been with the Celtics.
1 year at Berkeley. Wasn't he?
So he came here at 19. He came here as a teenager. So he's been here for 10 years. I think it's really shaped him. I think what he gave back, whether it was, going to the State House and working with Governor Healy and before that, Governor Baker to make sure that kids juvenile kids had a better path if they got in trouble, to not always just go to jail and sort of rot away, wanting to start a Black Wall Street in Boston, doing the stuff at MIT, investing in communities, both quietly and publicly. I mean, there were a lot of things Jaylen Brown did that people didn't know about. He didn't publicize everything he did. As a basketball fan, it was time to go. I mean, to me, I've wanted them to trade him for years because I don't think him and Jason Tatum truly mesh on the floor. I think it's very much me basketball. Jaylen Brown always wanted to prove that he was a star like Jason Tatum. So if Jason Tatum took a shot, then Jaylen Brown wanted to take a shot. And it became like ISO basketball, like me first basketball. I think the reason it worked in 2024 is because you had Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis come onto the team. Derek White was a revelation that year, and together as a cohesive unit, they could kind of balance each other out. But once Jaylen Brown led the team last year, there was no way he was going to just keep acquiescing to Jason Tatum, and I think that was going to come to a head. And I think it was time. Now, with that said,
she's an expert, much more than I am on
with
this.
That said, I hate the return. My first response was, why Philadelphia? You just made the team that knocked you out of the first round, that came back from a 3-1 deficit. You just made them so much better because now they've got Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe and Joel Embiid and Jaylen Brown. If that combination works, right now, the sports books right now still have the 76ers below the Celtics in both odds to win the Eastern Conference and odds to win the NBA title. But I would think that will leapfrog fairly quickly. So I don't know why you did that. I don't think Paul George was suspended 25 games last year for PED
Plus,
use.
he's 72.
He's 36, so he's 7 years older than Jaylen Brown, which in real life, 7 years is not that big of a PED use, performance-enhancing drugs, which doesn't happen all that often.
I'd like you to comment on what Trenni has had to say here. Can you comment on that, please?
I've changed my mind completely. Get rid of him. See you later.
I mean, listen, it's funny you say that because I would have preferred if they would have traded him to Milwaukee and gotten Giannis, though, because I do feel like, okay, so now this is kind of a reset, because you're not going to be, not once yesterday. I don't know if you guys listened to the 45-minute press conference.
I listened to 20 minutes of it.
Yesterday. I was like, oh boy, we're still talking about this, huh? They never
This
once...
is the owner of the team and the president of basketball
operations, Brad Stevens, who was asked about 72 questions, and Bill Chisholm, who was asked about 2 questions. The owner of the Celtics, he's really sort of the face, the governor. It's a big ownership group. Not once did either of them use the term championship. Not once in that press conference. So they are not setting up to be a championship-level team. They just, I don't know, I guess they'll be okay.
Marjorie's heartbroken.
I'm heartbroken.
Or maybe you're not
heartbroken.
I'm
not
not sure.
If they stop going for 3-pointers on nights when they can't hit 3-pointers,
yeah, but I don't know.
I mean,
maybe that'll change. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. You were the sports expert, and obviously I am
Thanks.
not.
I'm glad I
could
could sway you over to my side.
Okay. Trenni Casey is our sports authority. She delivers the latest news in the trading. Jaylen Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trenni Casey. Up next, we're going to talk with John King. We're also going to touch again on Graham Plattner with John King and other news out of D.C. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. This is BPR, GBH, and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library.
More roaring fans, the tartan army, a Cape Verde Cinderella story. The North American World Cup is spreading joy and excitement from Boston to LA. But when the final whistle blows, will any changes last? Join me, Edgar B. Hurlick III, and NPR immigration correspondent Jasmine Garst as we explore whether a global sporting event can bring the world closer together. The World Cup Effect, a special hour from GBH News tomorrow at 1 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Morningside Music Bridge, returning to Boston. The summer program shines a spotlight on young classical musicians from around the world, with concerts July 12th through August 7th at New England Conservatory. mmb.international. And Maine Maritime Museum. Their new exhibit, Resounding, highlights the resilience and traditions of Maine's indigenous and Black maritime communities, featuring both historic artifacts and contemporary art. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At 12:30 or so today, as we've said, we will be joined live by algae from the Reflecting Pool. Don't ask, just tune in. And tomorrow at noon, the mayor of Boston for July's edition of Ask the Mayor. Mayor Wu will be here from noon to 1. Joined now live at the library by, wrong person, on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the great reporting project all over the map. Just last month, John from Dorchester delivered a keynote speech at the 5-year anniversary of the New Bedford Light, a fabulous nonprofit newsroom. We've had him on the show, in which he said, quote, 3 values that matter most in journalism: truth, trust, and optimism. We are here to tell John we are 2/3 of the way there. John, it is very good to see you. Welcome, John King.
Yeah, thank you very much, John King. So
today I'm second billing to algae. Got it.
That's right.
Everybody is second billing to algae today, John.
So we spent the first 20 minutes today talking with our listeners about Graham Plattner and the latest accusations against him of being accused of rape and the other things that have gone in the past. What's going to happen? He has till Monday to pull out.
Yeah, the expectation is that he will. Look, it's a horrible, horrific, very serious allegation against him. His support in the party, including among progressives who had been with him, has collapsed. There's been some. This is starting to infuriate some people in the party, but there's been some quote unquote, I'll call them demands from people on the staff saying, you know, he'll only drop out by the deadline if the replacement candidate is acceptable to him. So this is a horrible story with a terrible allegation on the table, which Plattner denies, but a terrible, credible allegation on the table, which he denies, that is now becoming a very complicated political story. But the expectation is that within a day or two he will drop out, and then the Maine Democratic Party is going to have to come up with a process to pick a replacement.
John, do you know anything? Well, it's a stupid question to ask John if he knows anything about candidates. What do you know about the candidates who are on the list of most likely to be picked by the Maine Democratic Party to replace him?
There are several already making phone calls, doing the things necessary to be ready to do that. First, the process question. The Maine Democratic Party can pick its process here. So you could have the executive committee pick a candidate, or what I've been told by several Maine Democrats is what they hope to do is actually have a very quick process. But remember, people have the memories of the Kamala Harris situation.
Exactly.
It's not a direct comparison, but they don't want to be seen. There's already a lot of tension here between progressives and the establishment, between Maine outsiders who came in and recruited Plattner, didn't do a thorough vetting process. There's a lot of I told you so among Maine Democrats happening today. What they're hoping to do, Jim, is quickly settle on a process. And what a lot of the smart Maine Democrats, I'll call them, people who've been at this a long time, have been telling me is get the county committees to very quickly have a process where if you want to have town halls, if you want to have candidates come in and do quick town halls, whatever, but have the counties come up with a process where they make a recommendation to the central committee and try to have, it's not a primary, but at least so you can have statewide input from your Democrats across the state. One of the leading candidates right now is a guy named Troy Jackson, who like Plattner, is a Bernie Sanders guy. Jackson ran and lost in the primary for governor. Interesting story. He's a logger from a conservative part of the state. First ran for office for the Maine legislature as a Republican, then ran as an independent, then became a Democrat. There's some resentment against him, even by Mainers who like him, because of the Sanders connection, because some people are mad about the Sanders people who came in and recruited Plattner. The current Secretary of State could be a candidate. The health director during COVID, Dr. Shah, could be a candidate. There are a couple others.
Dr. Shah?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
not your
No,
doctor.
no.
Oh,
Not
not
a
our
doctor.
Dr. Shaw. Oh, okay. I was
but,
all excited there for a second.
yeah,
He was at Brown University, and he ran
Yeah, and
the.
occasionally you
But he
still
lives
hear
in
the
Newton.
governor's name.
Yeah.
You hear the governor's name a little bit, but a lot of people think it would actually be best, to probably move on from Governor Mills, even though a lot of Maine Democrats have thought from the beginning she would have been the strongest candidate. You've seen this whole generational and the establishment versus liberal thing play out, and a lot of Mainers think we need to find somebody new, somebody younger, and move on from the past fight, which is now created a
John, I
mess.
just want to clarify something, though. When you said that there's a belief there's got to be a credible public process because of the blowback against how Kamala Harris was selected, they only have 2 weeks from the time he drops out or from next Monday. I don't know which it is, but they have a very short window, right?
Yeah, you can't have. There's no. I don't mean any voting here. I don't mean Maine voters get to have a new primary. But could you have the county committee, right? So pick a county in Maine, right? Could you have a county committee, have a Zoom meeting, or have a quick town hall meeting, and invite candidates if they want to come in, and then the county committee makes a recommendation to the state. Do you have some sort of a process where people at least have a chance? It would have probably a lot of it would have to be done like this, like we're doing this over Zoom. Maine's a big state, but can you quickly come up with some sort of process to at least get input and to give the candidates some time to make public statements? You cannot have a full primary, obviously not. You'd have to have this whole thing done in 2 weeks. Actually, I think a couple of days less than that.
John, last question about this, and we are lucky enough to have, I think Margie and I would agree, the best person to answer this question. If Susan Collins is able to keep her seat, is there any credible path for the Democrats to retake the Senate?
Yes, but it's very hard. It's very, very hard. The Democrats need +4, which means, number one, you have to hold on to Michigan, where you have a similar fight playing out in the Democratic primary, establishment versus progressive. The Democrats would have to hold on to Michigan and hold on to Georgia, and then they need +4. And so if Susan Collins is the only Republican senator from a state that Kamala Harris won. She's the only Republican senator who actually, was reelected with Biden with a split ticket there. So it's the most blue of the targets. Does that mean, so the Democrats would have to win North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, and Alaska? Or if they couldn't win all 4 of those, Iowa? So you're just at, it's pretty common sense. Maine looks a lot easier to win than Iowa, right? Maine looks a lot easier to win than Texas for the Democrats, even than Ohio and North Carolina. So is it possible? Yes. Maine was the #1 Democratic target in this cycle. So that's why they peel this onion away. There's anger, there's disappointment, there's frustration, there's disdain, there's I told you so, there's everything here. And they got 2 weeks to try to figure it out.
Well, it seems people are very, very concerned, obviously, about these very serious charges, the alleged rape and the alleged mistreatment of women before that. But, I can't get around the fact that this very conservative Supreme Court does not really believe women have control over their own bodies. They've already outlawed abortion, but abortions are continuing because of mifepristone and misoprostol, those 2 abortion drugs.
We should be clear, they haven't outlawed abortion. They've said there's no constitutional right to abortion, so individual states.
Yes.
I'm not defending it, believe me, I just want to clarify.
In essence, but in states like ours where you can still go and get an abortion. But if they were to go further, and why not go further? They could outlaw medical abortion, which is what most abortions are now in the United States. That would be the end of abortion. So it's a real dilemma here, I think, for the Supreme Court. And we don't center our elections on the Supreme Court. I hope that they can do that in Maine to underscore the importance here.
Well, already her vote for Justice Kavanaugh was going to be an issue. Senator Collins' vote for Justice Kavanaugh was going to be a big issue in the race. She says he, disappointed her, he misled her. They'll litigate that in the campaign. But that is certainly one of the big issues in the race. I think I talked about this when I came back from Maine a couple months ago when I went up there to do a piece on this very issue. A lot of questions about Graham Plattner's character, a lot of resentment in the state from longtime Mainers that these outsiders did not do a thorough vetting, and they were worried something like this was going to happen. And I think I said on this program that there are a lot of people up there who are so angry at Trump about personal character issues and about these policy issues you're talking about, a woman's right to have autonomy over her body. And they were kind of having a hard time with the idea of voting for Plattner, a guy they didn't trust, to get rid of a guy they didn't trust, or to stop the agenda of a guy they didn't trust, to get into Trump. If the Democrats win Maine and they win the Senate, obviously they can stop the Trump agenda. So that's been a big part of this conversation. can you put your concerns about him, your doubts about him, can you make it about something bigger, right? It's all about Trump. Now we're past that. I think we're past that. It seems pretty apparent that Plattner has no support. The Democrats have said they won't give him any money if he stays on the ballot. So I think by the time we talk next Tuesday, this will be done, and the question will be, who do they pick to replace? And I think you can be fairly certain, Marjorie, the issues you're talking about, the Democrats want them to be front and center in this campaign. Plattner's own issues have made that more difficult.
Yeah.
We're talking to John King. John, quickly, since you mentioned Michigan and the middle candidate, for lack of a better expression, I guess, I don't even know if you call her the moderate, but the one that was somewhere in between the establishment choice, Stevens, and the more progressive choice, El Sayed, dropped out of the race. There is concern amongst, I think, establishment Democrats that El Sayed may be an easier target for the Republican nominee Rogers than Stevens would be. Where do the numbers lie?
I'm on my way to Michigan in the morning to explore this, because the primary is August 4th. El Sayed, any Democrat, even people close to Stevens, will tell you El Sayed is leading right now. You're right, State Senator Mallory McMorrow dropped out. The question is, her numbers were going down. There's a lot of pressure for her. She's more progressive than Stevens. She's not quite as progressive, I guess, if you did a list of 100 issues, than El Sayed, but she's pretty far over there, and she thought that she was a more acceptable candidate. She thought she could win in places maybe where he might struggle. So we'll see how this one plays out, but you have, again, clear battle lines here in a race. You talked about, can the Democrats get there without Maine? Well, if the Democrats lose Michigan, their map gets, implodes on them, if you will. So this is you have this giant generational, ideological, philosophical fight in the Democratic Party that is now playing out not only in a absolutely critical 2028 bellwether state, which Donald Trump won last time. Donald Trump won 2 of the 3 times he's run for president. But you also have this Senate seat is so critical. So this fight we've been talking about, this debate within the Democratic Party, you can call it a civil war, you can call it a struggle, call it what you will. Some people view it differently. Some people view it as healthy. Some people view it as wildly unhealthy. Is now going to play out in one of the most important states in the United States when it comes to both the midterm elections and then the next presidential election.
So Mitch McConnell, the EMTs were at his home. He was unconscious. What is the latest on Mitch McConnell?
There is no latest. There is no latest, which is sad. It's not a statement about McConnell as much as about our times. But the President of the United States is not candid about his health. We've had a number of other people who've been very reluctant to discuss their health. In the case of Congressman Kaine from New Jersey, it's a very difficult depression diagnosis. And again, I want to give a lot of grace there. But there used to be a standard that if you had public office, you had to at least have some transparency about your condition and your ability to perform. And Senator McConnell's staff has told us virtually nothing about his condition. We certainly all hope that he's recovering. They say he's stable. They say he's doing Senate work. But we have absolutely no details, no medical details about what happened, no medical details about his progress or lack thereof. And so, look, many of your listeners, I'm guessing, are not Mitch McConnell fans. I would say this, as someone who's known Senator McConnell and covered Senator McConnell for a long time, this is an interesting moment for this to happen, in the sense that it's number one, it's sad. He's not running for re-election. Again, whatever your politics, he's someone who's been in public service for a long time, and he was trying to get out gracefully, end his career, and get off the stage. Number 2, though, imagine if the Republicans do get shellacked in the midterm elections. Well, that will be the beginning of the conversation about what comes after Trump. Mitch McConnell would very much like to be part of that conversation, because he very much does not like Donald Trump and what he's done to the Republican Party, but it appears most unlikely he will have any role in that conversation, if at all.
Every single time we mention Mitch McConnell, I feel compelled to mention a really important piece of journalism from Frontline. It was called Supreme Revenge, Battle for the Court, and it traces the history of young Senator Mitch McConnell after Robert Bork from Harvard is denied a seat on the Supreme Court, and he pledges his career to moving the court to the right and making sure very conservative nominees become justices. He succeeded in a regrettable way from our perspective, but in a very successful way from his perspective. And it really is a brilliant tracing of that history, and maybe has some lessons for people who are not happy with what the Supreme Court looks like right now. Again,
you make a fantastic point, Jim. You make a fantastic point, and anyone who wants to study politics, I would urge you to study the people with whom you disagree even more than you study the people with whom you agree. And so if you don't like what has happened with the Supreme Court, you should study Senator McConnell, because you're right, he had an almost singular focus here. Another issue he was huge on in a quiet way, but publicly when needed to be, was the Citizens United and issues like, essentially taking the limits out of campaign financing. He was a big advocate of, open it up. So if you look at McConnell's legacy, which is Citizens United and the Supreme Court we have today, he will be mentioned in the history and the political science conversations for a very, very long time to come.
So, I'm sorry, Margaret.
John, we have less than 2 minutes left, but what's going to happen with this housing bill? The president has refused to sign, but it got bipartisan support, and it becomes law, I think, on Friday.
Friday, I think. If he does nothing?
If he does nothing, it will become law. He called it a big yawn because it's not his election bill that he wants. Look, the Congress actually did something on a bipartisan basis. Nothing in that bill is going to change anything before the midterm elections, but at least it was an effort to say we're trying to do something about an issue that matters to a whole hell of a lot of Americans, forget whether they're Democrats or Republicans. So it certainly looks like it's just going to become law without his signature. But this is an issue where the Republicans hope that he would try to help them, and essentially he's laughed at them.
It is. Speaking of Trump, I know I'm a broken record, but whenever I have you, who's been doing what you do at different levels for 40 plus years, I ask you dramatic questions like this. Have you ever heard a quote like the one that Trump did last week? We don't have time to play it, where he said, even a greater a threat than World War I, World War II, 9/11, and Pearl Harbor was
and September 11th
were the winning candidacies of what he calls communists, democratic socialists in primaries. You ever heard a quote quite like that, John King?
No, and for when it comes to the fact checks or the context checks, I would give that quote a red flag.
But I'm bummed. Very nicely done there, John.
Yeah.
We know how you
poor
feel.
Americans felt bad for that team last night. Thank you very much,
John
John
great
King.
to see you as always. Be well. Good luck in Michigan. We're dying to hear what you have to say. Thanks.
John King is chief national correspondent for CNN, where he also hosts the great reporting series All Over the Map, going out interviewing real voters about what they think about the issues. We say thank you, John, and thank those of you who are listening to us on NEPM. The Fabulous 413 start at 3 o'clock this afternoon. You can tune into them as well. We're going to keep going here in Boston. After this quick break, the head of the ACLU of Massachusetts, Carol Rose, will join us. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR, GBH, and NEPM, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Unlock all NPR Plus podcasts by supporting GBH and enjoy exclusive perks like the Sunday Puzzle Podcast, early access, and bonus episodes from some of your favorite shows. Learn more at gbh.org/NPR Plus.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Cambridge Trust, a division of Eastern Bank, offering business and personal wealth management and private banking services, investing more than $240 million in local communities since 1994. More at cambridgetrust.com.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin, and former NASA head Charles Bolden. bostonspeakers.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Very important announcement, Jim. At 12:30, we're going to be joined live right here at the Boston Public Library by the algae from the reflecting pool in D.C.
Didn't it sound like a much better idea when we came up with this a week ago than it does on the day we're actually doing it?
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes.
Well,
we'll see how it goes. We don't know. You don't know what to expect.
You
from
never
the
know
algae.
with
It could go
algae,
right,
it's
it could go left, it could go up, it could go down.
I think we do know.
Okay, tomorrow at noon, we're going to be joined by the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, for July's edition of Ask the Mayor. The Mayor will be with us here at the Boston Public Library. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now live at the library by Carol Rose. Carol, of course, is the Executive Director of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. Hello there, Carol.
Hi, it's great to be here.
You too.
Hey, Carol. So let's start with the Supreme Court decisions. We've been talking about the Supreme Court all morning. Let's start with the TPS decision involving Haitians and Syrians. What is this going to mean?
Yeah, so this case was Mullen versus Doe, and the ACLU's role. We were counsel for the temporary protected status holders from Syria, but it also was applying to those from Haiti. And I think the first thing just to say, well, first of all, this is a 6-3 ruling written by Justice Alito. So it was the conservative versus the liberal branch. And basically, the ruling permits deportations to commence without any scrutiny from the courts as to whether President Trump's rationale for revoking TPS holds up, whether his administration followed the right legal process or anything like that. So it's this huge grant of executive branch power without any kind of due process or any other kinds of, or even statutory protection. So it's just, it's devastating. And the problem now is we have all these temporary protected status, TPS holders here in Massachusetts and across the United States who've lived here for decades, who often have children here. And now they're risking being deported to Haiti or to Syria or other countries if they continue on this path. Countries that our own State Department has said are too dangerous for them to travel. So it's just really a shameful decision.
I want to ask you a couple of things about this. Without this status, my understanding is they can't have a work permit. Have work permits already been revoked for?
No.
They have not.
No, there's a certain amount of time that has to pass, and then it's getting remanded down to the lower courts for them to actually lay that out. And one thing I want to say, for people who are listening, whether you yourself are a TPS holder or someone you know or love is a TPS holder, there are a lot of resources available. And I just have to say that Boston City Councilor Ruth Z. Lujan is doing great work on this.
I think she's going to be with us later this week, actually,
Wonderful.
to talk about this, I believe.
Right,
yeah.
and making a lot of resources available. So I would really encourage people to find out. And you can find that out if you go to the ACLU website here in Massachusetts, which is aclum.org, and look at resources. Everything from legal resources that are available, and make sure you don't get a bad lawyer, because there are a few that are going to take advantage of this. But there are good lawyers that are out there. There are material resources that are available. There's Know Your Rights trainings that are available. So there are a lot of resources. So it's so important that we lean in. And if you're not a TPS holder yourself, but you want to do something about it, look at those resources too and find out where you could donate to provide material support to people. And also, the last thing is to take action. Congress can change this ruling. Congress can reverse it. And our very own Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley managed to get a bipartisan bill passed through the House. Senator Ed Markey is pushing through a bill on the Senate side. And we need to put pressure, not just here in Massachusetts, but nationwide. Business people, especially, should be there putting pressure. Elders who vote a lot and have resources. We're going to lose so many people who are providing nursing care and elder care. So if we all, as a country, lean into this and say no, there's at least some chance that we can get this horrible decision reversed.
And by the way, we should say, for people who didn't pay attention to this decision, correct me at any point if I'm wrong, for the 6 justices, the conservative-leaning ones is an understatement, to rule as they did, they had to find that there was not racist motivation on the part of the president.
Right.
And what Kagan, I think, who wrote the dissent, did is she cited all these examples that all of you are familiar with, with the outrageous, overt, high-profile racism directed at Haitians.
Exactly.
That Trump and others in the administration, and they chose to turn a blind eye to that.
Said,
and if they had found it to be racist, it violates the 14th Amendment, right?
Right, exactly.
And they wouldn't have been. So, okay, that is one. It's worth reading. I didn't read the whole thing. I read a lot of it, Kagan's dissent. The second thing is there any other status available to at least some Haitians?
Is there any way out of this?
Other than legislation, which obviously we should support, is there any status that would protect some of these people?
And so what's important to keep in mind is, I will tell you, immigration, we have immigration experts on our staff.
I know you do.
Immigration law is so complicated. And so there may be other forms of status, whether it's asylum or a U visa or a T visa. So there's all sorts of other kinds of ways that people might be able to stay here, which is why the most important thing is for people to get a lawyer and a good lawyer. And so you can go to our website, you can go to the Attorney General's website, you can go to Boston City Councilor Ruth Z. Lujan's website. And so all of those resources are out there, and I would just encourage people to learn your rights, know your rights, but most importantly, make sure you get a good lawyer.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because people always say, well, I'm okay with legal immigration. It's not, I don't like illegal immigration. These people were here legally under the temporary protected status.
Absolutely.
They were legal.
They played by the rules, and they've been paying taxes. They've been taking care of our children. They've been taking care of our elders. They are a vital part of our Commonwealth and of our nation. And so it's just incredibly heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking.
That this is happening. But
So
it's
if that's what they're doing now,
we need
think
to
what they
rise
could
up.
be doing if they're unleashed for another term.
What is that? Is that a campaign for Plattner? Vote for Plattner?
No, it's not a vote for Plattner, but it's basically saying if the Democrats don't take the Senate, you think this is bad, it's just going to get worse.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's
Very
important
worse.
for all of us to rise up. The ACLU, we're in the Supreme Court more than any other organization, with the exception of the Department of Justice. So we are on the front lines. We're fighting that. But the courts alone clearly are not going to save us. We need to have people power. We need to have legislative power. We need to build firewalls for freedom. And that's what we're trying to do here in Massachusetts and in every single state across this nation.
There was actually a good decision. This geofencing thing, which was written by Kagan. Speaking of Kagan's dissent, I think, explain what geofencing is and what the court determined, because this actually affects every single person listening to the show, because everybody's got a smartphone.
If you don't have a cell phone, then it won't affect you.
Yeah,
but if you have a cell phone, it's going to affect you.
So explain the deal.
So this was basically a ruling that was drafted by Kagan, again, with a 6-3 decision. Only this time, only Thomas Alito and Amy Coney Barrett were dissenting, and so we got Roberts and Kavanaugh.
Did I say on the air yesterday, and if I did, I'm sorry to repeat myself, I didn't know this till the weekend, on every single non-unanimous decision before the Supreme Court, every non-unanimous decision, the only 2 justices to decide with Trump on every single case were
Alito
and Thomas.
Yeah.
Every single case.
Yeah.
And it's just, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
They're just his lapdogs.
They are his lapdogs.
That's a technical Latin term.
It's a legal term, yeah.
Anyway, so basically what the court ruled was that a government request for any amount of cell phone location history requires a search warrant under the 4th Amendment. And so you can't just say, I'm going to go to Google and ask them to give me the data, right? Because then you'd be like, wait a minute, that's my data. Google doesn't have a right to give it away. And this arises because in recent years we're seeing law enforcement officers who are employing these so-called geofence warrants, which is what the court talks about. And basically it directs the Google or other companies to hand over user location data to them so that there's like a crime's been committed. We don't know. We just want everybody's location who is in a 10-block region or whatever it is, kind of region, and we want to look at everybody there. And the problem is that you pick up a lot of innocent people, and you may not, in fact, get the guilty person that you're looking for, the person who allegedly committed a crime. And so it's really important that Kagan went out and said, no, this is implicated by the 4th Amendment, the right to be free of unwarranted search and seizure. So you have to go and get a warrant in order to get this data. And this really is important to all of us because, again, as you said, Jim, all of us carry a cell phone around. And law enforcement is now put on notice, and the companies are put on notice, that they have to go and they have to play by the rules. Just because the technology changes doesn't mean the principles of the right to be free from government searches is somehow set aside.
Can we also, I think it's important to say here, you said this, but I don't want to gloss over it. For those who are saying, well, in this case, they got the guy who was, quote, guilty, even though obviously his conviction is overturned based on this decision, they can still get the guy or the woman, or they just go get a search warrant like they would in another setting if they wanted to go into your house and search your house. So it doesn't preclude them from doing anything. It just protects your privacy rights at the same time that they have the right to do what they want to do, just constitutionally permissible way.
That's exactly right. And for what it's worth, the ACLU of Northern California, where you have a lot of tech orientation, did a study in 2024 that found that the efforts to use these geofencing warrants actually are incredibly broad and sweep in a whole lot of people, innocent people. And so it's important to do that. And I would just remind all of us that here in Massachusetts, we now have a Data Privacy Act was passed unanimously by the Senate, passed unanimously by the House. It's not going to go into conference committee, and this would help to create further protections for all of us here in Massachusetts from having really really confidential information, not just consumer data privacy, but cell phone location data from being scraped by these, data privacy profiteers and sold to the highest bidder. So it's important that we have that.
We're talking to Carol Rose from the ACLU. So speaking about things that seem excessive, I'm not a lawyer, but you guys are, but it seems like unusual punishment to me, is this case out in Texas involving one of them had a gun and shot a cop, and that is obviously horrible. The cop survived, but nonetheless, he shot a cop. But the other people that were there in the so-called noise demonstration outside the Prairieland ICE Detention Center in Texas got like sentences of 30 years, 40 years, 50 years.
100 years.
100 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
so this is
100 years? You don't get 100 years usually for... you get life for murder, I guess. You could.
Yeah. Well, these are effectively life sentences.
Essentially,
right.
Exactly.
So
one of the guys who got 30 years was not even there, by the way.
No, he just
not
moved
even
there.
He moved some.
He moved their paraphernalia
Yeah.
afterwards, their sign-up sheets or their magazines, whatever they were.
Exactly. So I just want to say, first of all, this is not an ACLU case, so I sort of know what I've read in the papers, kind of thing. So I haven't gone back and listened to the transcript or anything. But from what I'm reading, from what I'm hearing, this is really outrageous because, these were people. It was the 4th of July. They were involved in a noise demonstration. One of them got picked up for having explosives, which were actually fireworks, which, like, for anybody who just celebrated the 4th of July or maybe was down in D.C. to see what happens when you have fireworks, it's pretty outrageous. But it's part of a larger pattern that really started back in September of 2025 when President Trump passed this, a national security memorandum, basically saying we're going to change the definition of what is a quote-unquote domestic terrorist. Right. In the past, it used to be a domestic terrorist. It was sort of post 9/11, started out being somebody who committed a certain crime. Now, that designation can go to anybody who expresses the following views. This is according to the White House. Someone who's anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-Christianity, supports the overthrow of the United States government, is extreme on migration, race, or gender issues, shows hostility toward those who hold American views on family, religion, and morality. I mean, if that's not a clear
that
violation,
takes in millions,
the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing more and more of these cases where people are being organizations are being tagged as domestic terrorist organizations, not because they've committed any crime, but because of the beliefs that they have. And just a couple days ago, so this is being played out in lots of places. We're seeing it. We saw it. Out in Minneapolis. We saw it at Broadmoor out in Chicago, where actually the grand jury refused to indict because it was just such a crazy thing. And then just a couple of days ago, the ACLU filed a lawsuit on behalf of CARE, which is the Council on American Islamic Relations, because DeSantis has passed a state analog to this, naming people domestic terrorists, basically saying that he gets to designate any group that is a domestic terrorist group, and when you've been designated, you have no due process. There's no way to fight it. If you help them, like by providing legal support, legal services, you may be then giving material support to terrorists. And it's just it's a clear violation of free speech, of rights of association, of right to petition the government, of due process. I mean, it's so clearly unconstitutional, and yet they're just shameless in moving forward on this. So we're going to sue. We have sued them on July 1st. And we're going to try to shut this down because it's un-American and it's unpatriotic and it's unconstitutional.
But I'm kind of worried, as I said before, about the Supreme Court. I mean, maybe they're down with this, these 6 conservatives.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that we're going to have to take it up to the court, and that's why I'm saying the courts alone aren't going to save our democracy. We just celebrate our 250th anniversary, birthday of declaring the Declaration of Independence, and that certain truths are held to be self-evident. They're still self-evident, and it still requires all of us. And it started here in Massachusetts, and it continues here in Massachusetts. We have an obligation, we have the right, we have the duty to stand up and to defend our democracy and to say not on our watch. And so I just want to tell everybody, it's so important to get involved. It's so important to take action. If you don't know how, again, go to the aclum.org website. You can join our action team, know your rights, all of these things. But no one person alone is going to save our democracy. But if each of us does one thing, one small thing, maybe together we will.
So, having said that, and that is inspirational, and as you could hear, some people here found it inspirational. If somebody called you and said, I need a little advice, Carol Rose at the Civil Liberties Union. I'm about to send a letter exercising my First Amendment rights to the acting director of ICE, Todd Lyons at the time, and I'm going to call him a monstrous human being and refer to him by the name of a high-ranking official in Nazi Germany who was in charge of the secret police. I assume 5 years ago you would have said, that's your choice, that's protected speech, you're fine. Well, this guy did this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's David Striever.
Yeah, I read about it.
And the federal authorities came after him, came to get him. And, you know, it's one of the, we talk about this all the time. Trump has unlimited resources.
Mm-hmm.
So the good news is Striever or the former head of the FBI will win their case after they're bankrupted, their families put through HARS for 2.5 years, and the courts will not hold the Justice Department lawyers in contempt for lying to the court about what the motivation was here. What do you say to David Striever when he calls your office and says, I want to send that letter. It's clear to me it's protected activity.
Mm-hmm.
Am I in good shape doing this?
Well, I think it, frankly, yes, I hope so, because if you're calling the ACLU, that means you're going to know the contours of your rights, and those are the contours of your rights.
Can you guarantee me that they're not going to come after me at a hotel in New York City after I do this?
There's no guarantee, but I will tell you that there's a guarantee that your rights will be defended by the ACLU. And the most important thing, Jim, I often say that courage is contagious, and I think it is, but courage is also hard. And I think it's really important that we recognize that so many people have come before us and they've given their lives. They've given think about the veterans who are marching without masks down in Washington, D.C. in defense of our democracy. People who've come before us have been willing to make those sacrifices to defend our democracy. And I think it's worth it for us to continue to do so. Because when we give in, when we silently give in, that's when democracy really dies. And so I just think it's important that we all do our bit, we all stand up, and we take a risk. But to say it's without risk, I can't say that. There are risks.
From your lips to courageous souls' ears. Great to see you, Carl
Okay,
Rose.
what's your website? Give us our website again, Carol.
ACLUM.org.
ACLUM.org, which of course stands for Massachusetts. And get all the info on how to fight back.
Yeah,
right
thank
there.
you.
Thank you.
And when you get thrown in jail or deported, they'll represent you. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of the call.
We've been speaking with Carol Rose, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. Coming up, thank you, Carol. Coming up after this quick break, the moment we've all been waiting for.
Oh my God.
Interior Secretary Doug Burgum says the algae in the reflecting pool is gone. Well, our staff did some digging, and we found the algae's next stop, which happens to be the Boston Public Library. The reflecting pool algae is here. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browning. Listen to BPR 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, there's a good deal of anxiety around the impact of AI on jobs. New polling shows half of Americans have concerns about their careers or careers of loved ones becoming obsolete. But we made it through the Industrial Revolution, the invention of sewing machines, the internet, even the Roomba. Is AI any different? We'll ask ChatGPT. Just kidding. It's the Curiosity Desk, today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And 360 Public Relations, for 25 years committed to helping brands connect and grow through culturally relevant storytelling, thought leadership, influencer marketing, and more. Learn more at 360pr.plus. And Burton's Grill and Bar, offering catering for family gatherings and corporate events with gluten-free and food allergy-friendly options. Orders available for takeout and delivery in Greater Boston. burtonsgrill.com.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. If you are not here or watching the streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, you will not be able to appreciate fully the next handful of minutes here. Tomorrow at noon, the Mayor Wu, will be with us for July's edition of Ask the Mayor. Now, I want to start this segment by saying the following.
Yes.
You and I are serious journalists. Is that correct? Okay,
well,
fine.
Sort of.
And as a result, we have, I believe, the only exclusive interview that has been done
in America
with algae from the reflecting pool in D.C. As you know,
It's not easy.
Thank you. appreciate it. The algae has been making headlines for weeks and is tired, we are told, being left out of the conversation. On Sunday, I'm sure you know, Trump announced on Truth Social the reflecting pool water is, quote, crystal clear. So gone from the pool, according to him, but here at the BPL to break its silence and tell their side of the story in the role of Ms. Algae Bloom is actually well, I'll tell you who the algae looks like a little bit later. Algae Bloom, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Is this your first public appearance since getting out of the reflecting pool?
No, I've been in the reflecting pool for thousands of years, and so it's not my first public appearance because everyone sees me there.
That's right, they do. They do see you there.
Their eyes nearly pop out of their head by witnessing the kind of beauty that only I, Algae, can offer.
Well, you are very beautiful. You are
very
so how did you get into the pool, Miss Algae Bloom? Did you grow there? Did you jump in?
No, my ancestors came over on the Mayflower. We were in steerage, humble beginnings. Yeah. But we've been here for forever and ever. And, I don't know what I'm going to do once I get out of the pool. I don't know where, there's no housing for algae.
Well, if he signs the bill by Friday, there could be. So cross your fingers. Now, forget how you got to the pool.
Wait, first of all, James, I don't have fingers. I'm algae.
Oh, that's right. You don't have any fingers.
How did you get here from the reflecting pool, Algae Bloom?
Greyhound.
Yes.
Okay, like
not the bus,
else.
an actual Greyhound.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I want to know, the president has been very consumed by the algae pool situation.
Don't you wish he would be consumed
by
fire?
That's the algae speaking.
Water.
It's not us talking.
I wondered if he perhaps called you and asked for a favor and said, please get out of the pool and we'll see what we can do.
No. He and I don't speak.
You don't speak?
No.
Okay.
We both had an affair many years ago with black mold. It's in the Epstein files.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, black mold must be one of your only friends because it's a lonely life.
No, we don't speak either. We don't speak either.
You don't speak either? Okay,
no.
That's all over now?
That's all over now.
But is it lonely to be algae in the pool? I mean, do you have
I have
fun?
Other friends. I have ladybugs. Lily pads.
Yeah, lily pads. Yeah.
They're dead, disgusting, bacterially infested lily pads, but they're lily pads.
We have a photograph of you actually humping a lily pad, which we're going to share in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Now, you said you haven't spoken to Trump and will not speak. Have you had any conversations with anybody in the Trump administration, from Stephen Miller to Doug Burgum, to anybody in the administration at all?
There's only one thing lower than algae, and that would be Stephen Miller. So, no, we don't speak.
You don't speak to him either.
One of the texters wants to know that there was a terrible tragedy involving these dead ducks in the reflecting pool.
Don't point your finger at me.
We're not going to blame, but you are a big piece of bacteria after all. That's what they call you, cyanobacteria.
Well, no, I mean we algae have our own version of Ozempic, and I wouldn't call myself a big piece of bacteria. I'd call myself a physically fit piece of bacteria.
So you would say that it was not from ingesting a part of your body that the dead ducks met their demise?
No, it had nothing to do with me. But I do, I feel sorry for the ducks. But
absolutely,
make way for algae is going to be a sculpture that's actually going to show up on the common.
Now, how
make way for algae?
I assume, even though you've been around for quite a while, I assume you've never had this kind of encounter with fame.
Are you hinting at my age?
No, it's not an ageist thing. I mean, algae lasts, does it not?
No.
It does last. Oh, we last
for years, for decades.
How are you dealing with fame? Because obviously you're front burnered, so to speak, since this reflecting.
I deal with fame like any other microscopic
Organism.
Organism. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
I deal with it. I'm sort of like the Katharine Hepburn of algae. I stick around my house. I kick around my house in Malibu, or I kick around my house in Long Island, and I just keep to myself, really.
Yeah.
Myself and a bottle of Jim Beam. But
Absolutely. Yeah. But with this newfound fame, I wonder if you're getting a lot of threats from the MAGA universe, which you're upsetting.
I
Trump
don't listen to those threats.
You don't listen?
No. They're all playing in a sandbox full of cat turds, and they're all going to regret it soon enough.
Okay, so how was the Taylor Swift wedding?
Huh? Oh, it was all right, She had spent like 5 minutes at my table.
Now, before you leave, and believe me, you're leaving very soon, do you have anything else you think the American public needs to know based upon the vilification of you and your sisters and brothers in the last month or so?
No, I think what's important is that we realize that without me, humanity wouldn't exist. I mean, we're part of the whole...
That's right.
Would you call it eco culture?
That's
I
right.
would, actually. I would call it the eco culture.
Food chain.
The food chain. I'm part of the food chain. Yeah. I mean, imagine me. I know people eat seaweed salad, but everyone should try a little algae salad. It really isn't that bad. With a carrot ginger dressing. Absolutely perfect.
Have you contemplated moving to Maine and running for Senate, or is that not something that's on your agenda?
Well, it's not something that's on my agenda at present. I wouldn't mind moving to Maine if I, again, had some little seaside cottage that I could just hang out, underneath. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. I move around quite a bit. I'm a traveler.
Yes. Yes.
Now, how would you rate
look
before
spectacular?
You go?
Doesn't Miss Algae look spectacular? I mean,
you've had a rather sordid career. We've known you for a long time. How would you rate this performance, for lack of a better expression, in the grand scheme of performances that you have been involved in? How would you rate this?
Well, you mean in my performance in the reflecting pool?
No, not that too, but I mean in your performance in your career, such as it is.
I don't know what you're talking about, James. I am simply a piece of algae trying to do my job.
That's
and
right.
I don't know what you're trying to allude to.
But wasn't it a wonderful thing to cause days and days of consternation for J.J. Cafaro, the weird guy that was supposed to be the pool cleaning guy, and the president...
He got the contract to fix it, by the way.
And the president himself, who became so obsessed with you morning and night.
Yeah, well, he's been that way for quite some time. He's never going to get it.
Okay, well, let me have to say, this lived up almost to my expectations.
Oh, thanks.
No, it did, and we are thrilled. And can we please hear it for the willingness and courage of the algae bloom to join us here on Boston Public Radio.
Thank you.
It was an honor. You know who he looks a lot like, by the way?
Yeah, he looks like Gold Dust Orphan Ryan Landry.
He looks a lot like him. Not exactly, but very much like him.
From the great Gold Dust Orphans at whose play we see every
Christmas. Do you shake, Algie, or do you not? You don't shake. Okay.
Shake.
There's no hands.
Okay. We have been speaking with playwright, actor, and Gold Dust Orphan Ryan Landry, a.k.a. Miss Algae Bloom, and you look spectacular,
He really
Miss Algae
does,
Bloom.
or it really does.
That
Did he
was
just
a
leave?
great algae.
Where the hell did he go?
Ensemble. Where is it?
He's connecting to someone in the control room.
Okay. Coming up after this quick break, change in plans.
This person just watching on YouTube said, I have no idea what I just tuned into. I hadn't thought of that. If you tuned into not at the beginning of the segment, but midway, that would be troubling.
That was the algae from the famous algae from the pool in Washington, D.C.
Algae has never looked better or spoken better.
Because there was so much interest in earlier this morning in the case of Graham Plattner, the candidate for Senate up in Maine, who now has been credibly accused of raping a woman, and his future in politics in Maine. We're going to go back to that. We're going to open the phone line, 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. Should Graham Plattner drop out? What do you feel about the election now? Do you know a substitute for him in the Democratic Party? 877-301-8970.
In Maryland, the average age of a crabber has climbed into the late 50s while the population of crabs has fallen. But some young crabbers are trying to carve out careers on Chesapeake Bay.
Most people my age they'd rather work in an office building than be out on the water.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly, the next generation of crabbers on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And MIT Sloan Executive Education. Their non-degree executive courses are led by MIT Sloan faculty and are designed to provide a targeted and flexible means to future-proof your business and career. Executive.mit.edu. And the Museum of Science. From live science demonstrations to hands-on exhibits, families can explore the wonders of Earth's evolution and the frontiers of space this summer. Learn more at mos.org.
Welcome back to BPR on 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We were delayed because we wanted a photograph with algae before algae was to go back to whatever pond they were going to. We decided, as Marjorie said, because there was such colossal interest in the Plattner situation, that we would, which we rarely do, return to the topic for our final conversation with you today. So here's an opportunity for those who didn't get through it, 877-301-8970, to weigh in on what you think should happen here. Plattner has said he has to consider what pathway for the future he will take. He has till Monday to pull out if he chooses to. If he withdraws from the race by Monday, the main Democratic Party has 2 weeks to pick a replacement. Marjorie said during our earlier discussion 2 hours ago that one of the notable supporters had not been heard from, Bernie Sanders. Well, breaking news from Politico minutes ago, Bernie Sanders says he told Plattner to, quote, step aside. So essentially, the whole breadth of support within the higher-ups of the Democratic Party have abandoned the candidacy, and I think the feeling is that he will abandon his as well, meaning Plattner. Should he? We had, if you weren't listening at the top of the show, the first 3 callers were women who identified themselves as survivors of sexual abuse. 2 of them said, for reasons that Marjorie broached around the importance of the Supreme Court, one of them broached the sins of Susan Collins, that despite the pain they suffered through and despite the credible accusations against Graham Plattner, that they would vote for him. One said she needed to know more, but I was sort of surprised by that. And we want to know where you are on this issue as it draws to probably a close, at least this phase of it. 877-301-8970. The only high-profile person we know who has publicly said he should stay in the race is the novelist Stephen King, who happens to live in Maine.
Here's Karen. It's a shame Democrats feel the need to take the moral high ground. Will that work for you when the Supreme Court is hard right for the next 40 years? Or will that be fodder for your show? That's from Karen. This is another person said, I just spent the last week at my place in Down East Maine, far more Plattner signs than Collins signs. I saw 10 minutes of Bangor News one night. Must have been 10 ads against Graham Plattner. Brutal and hateful without any facts. I've been closely following this campaign since the fall, and this person finds it coincidental this woman decided to speak out now.
You know this, wait, you said coincidental?
Yes, I mean, we're getting a lot of that, the timing of this. And by the way, the reason she says it, she was in that earlier piece.
The New York Times
in the
piece.
New York Times, and she said she supported his politics, and that's why she had moral qualms about coming out about this. And she didn't go to the police, and she went to a therapist and told other people.
And a friend, yeah.
And, yes, it's a man she was dating and stuff, and the texts are all there. But she just said she felt the need to come forward now because, well, actually, I'm not sure she said the reason why she needed to come forward now. Did she give a reason?
I think she said, I believe she does. She said it was a real moral dilemma, but
yeah.
she agrees with his politics. We played that sound before, but she thought people had she had an obligation to let people know what kind of person he was. Dano and Dudley says, I think the algae should run for Plattner's seat. At least we already know it's pond scum and would fit right in. Anonymous texter says, how pathetic that our only choices right now in Maine are between an accused rapist and a woman who supports an adjudicated rapist. And we've said this to you 1,000 times, but we'll say it again. In the E. Jean Carroll case, a civil jury concluded that Donald Trump had sexually abused E. Jean Carroll, and as we have explained, the same act that he was found liable for in Massachusetts would not be sexual abuse, it would be rape. So he has been adjudicated, he being Trump, is engaging in behavior that is considered rape under our laws here in Massachusetts. Where do you want to go?
Valerie in Newport, Rhode Island. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Valerie.
Hello. Good to talk to you again.
You too.
So, you know, the woman who was interviewed, I think what she said was entirely credible. I believe her. And I've had it up to here with my fellow Democrats who want to give Graham Plattner a pass because we need to beat Susan Collins. And their rationale is the Republicans don't play by the rules. Why should we have to?
Mm-hmm.
And to them, I say, you know, the Republicans, they also support protecting pedophiles, persecution of transgender people, using the office of the president for personal financial enrichment, controlling the media and suppressing voices of dissent, sending ICE agents into the streets of our cities and towns to terrorize and murder U.S. citizens, and turning our reflecting pool into an algae pond. So
correct.
So to them, I say, all right, well, if you're gonna give them a pass on the rape, what other of these Republican characteristics should we also emulate?
I think that's a really powerful argument, Valerie. That was an extraordinarily good call. Thank you for making it. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Let me say what I said earlier, which it doesn't rise to the level of the quality of these phone calls and texts, is it is not like the only option in Maine is Plattner versus Collins.
No.
There is an opportunity for the party there to pick a credible, viable candidate. He or she may not be as appealing as Plattner was a couple of months ago when he was crushing both Janet Mills in the primary and Collins in polls in the final. But it isn't like it's only the Supreme Court continues to be run by Donald Trump or it's Plattner. There are Democratic alternatives, and they should take it seriously.
John
there, and
King
I hope they will.
And other people have texted about this morning is the Troy Jackson, the logger, who used to be a Republican, comes from a conservative part of the state. Now he's a Democrat, and he was in the. I think he was in the Maine State Senate as well. Was he not?
I think I'm not sure.
Troy Jackson. And then there's the Secretary of State, which I believe is Sienna Bellows.
I don't know.
So there are other people, and let's hope that the Supreme Court. But again, are they going to vet these people in 3 days or 5 days, whatever?
Let's explain what the timeline is again. Plattner, under state party rules, has till next Monday, the 13th, to pull out. If he does pull out between now and then, the party has 2 weeks. I'm not sure if it's 2 weeks from when he pulls out or 2 weeks from next Monday to pick a replacement candidate. So that's not nothing. And I assume that they're engaged in that activity from a couple of weeks ago when the most recent charges, the sexting things, arose.
And you know what else? We talked about this before. I remember we got a phone call from someone who said they vote for a doorknob over Susan Collins, and so maybe they're upset about Susan Collins, and Trump and the Supreme Court would just transfer to another candidate. I don't know. Andrew in Wareham, thank you for calling.
Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
Hi.
If Susan Collins can vote for an accused rapist for the Supreme Court, I think I should be able to vote for Plattner, as he's an accused rapist, and this is not just normal stuff. It's a national emergency. This is maybe the end of democracy. It's time to act.
Well, you're not alone. Again, that's the Stephen King argument. Well, his argument is also there's also Trump, and if we exposed, he said on his Twitter account, the other members of the Senate, we'd find a lot more like this. So, Andrew, we hear you. Thank you very much for the call. So, Andrew's position is what matters more than what he is the damage that a continued Republican majority can do we're 2.5 more years of Donald Trump nominating justices.
And that's what the Kavanaugh accuser said when they were in high school, that he tried to rape her, and she managed to escape.
I found her totally credible, too,
totally,
I should say. Totally credible.
Trish from Florida, thank you for calling.
Hello, Trish.
Hi, long time, several times.
Thank you.
To be on.
Thank you.
I told your screener that I think that we can only blame PTSD to a certain extent. And having been a victim in the late 70s, I don't think I could vote for this man. My son lives in Maine. If I lived in Maine, I really don't think I could. And I'm terrified of what's going to happen if we lose the seats that we're in peril of losing.
What is your son?
What is your son? Both of you, as always,
Trish.
For your program.
Don't go away. Thank you, Trish.
Yep,
what is your son?
I'm right here.
What is your son saying to you? Your main son. What is he saying?
We have not discussed the topic. He has a new baby, and they've been very busy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate you calling. Call us again. Be well, Trish. Thank you from Florida. 877-301-8970.
There's also that guy from Maine Beer that people are mentioning, Dan Kleban or something like that. He's kind of a populist anti-Wall Street guy. That he was sort of not as well received as Plattner before everybody knew everything about Plattner.
I mean, the plus, I should say, assuming he does step down, which I imagine is a given, or step out of the race, and he be replaced. What is it, July something, August, September? It's 4 months till Election Day, give it less a few days, which is not nothing. And in light of the fact that the scrutiny on whoever replaces him on the Democratic ticket is going to be intense, people are going to get a lot of time in Maine to learn about whoever it is that is the Democratic nominee. And if you consider, as you've said, that a decent percentage of the Democratic vote is not just who Plattner was believed to be, but who Collins is. As a senator, maybe that's going to transfer to the next Democratic candidate. I don't know.
Steve in New Hampshire, thank you for calling.
Hello, Steve.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, just watching this, and it just surprises me that Democrats didn't do more work. It seems like the only thing that we have is that Trump is bad and we have a moral high ground. If you succeed the moral high ground, there's really nothing left. And this guy was a bad guy. Everybody know it. You just have to watch him. And accusing someone who's a billionaire of sexual abuse is very profitable. This is a regular guy who made $5,000 from his mom oyster farming.
What you're saying that lends credibility to Ruscott, the woman who has accused him, because she's not going to get anything out of this. Is what your point? Is that your point?
Yeah, I think.
I think she's credible on its face.
That could be dug up about this guy. I don't think it's that hard.
Well, we hear you, Steve. Thank you much for the call. And he did say on MS Now, which is the new MSNBC, a couple of weeks ago, that was it. There was no more scandalous information. And by the way, there's no reason to think if one finds this woman credible, which I do, and I know you do, and I think most who have seen her interviews, either read the Politico interview or seen her with Jake Tapper on CNN, why should you not believe there are not more? And that ultimately those people might be strengthened by what she was willing to do. And we'll find out that he has even a deeper problem.
I mean, it's clear from these stories, at the time at least, he had a severe drinking problem. She thought he had a blackout. So it's possible that he doesn't remember this because people have blackouts that have liquor problems, and he was one of them.
I think the caller that we had a few minutes ago, there have been fabulous calls today. The point she made, I think, is really important, is if you're willing to accept a candidate who is credibly accused of rape because of the greater, I was going to say good, I don't know what it is, the greater something, then are you willing to support somebody who you find out decided to cover up serial pedophilia like Trump et al. Are doing with Jeffrey Epstein, and go down the whole list of savagery that these people
Listen,
have directed at other human beings. Is that all acceptable in the name of winning?
It seems to me at this point it's fairly obvious what has to be done. He's got to get out, and everybody in Maine that's concerned about the Supreme Court, that's concerned about Susan Collins and Kavanaugh, and abortion and climate and housing and health care and all these other things, has to get out and vote for the Democrat. Let's hope the next Democrat does not have these kinds of problems, and just put somebody in there because the Senate needs to be run by Democrats, or else, as I said a million times, who knows what this next Supreme Court could do.
Couple of texts that I think are important. Lynn and Natick, I'll tell you what to do. Pick a woman to run. We won't have that issue. Pick a woman to run.
Yeah.
Anonymous texter makes another good point because there's a good parallel. They waited too long to acknowledge Joe Biden couldn't move forward. That's my primary concern. And I think you could say in retrospect, Democrats waited too long to decide that Plattner was a far too dangerous a candidate to be the nominee in Maine.
Well, they didn't vet him. They rushed. It was a central casting sort of thing, I think.
No, but when they learned about him, and we all learned about him over the past couple of months, wasn't everybody hoping that there won't be another shoe to drop? And that was naive, I think, in retrospect, don't you?
Yeah, now that we know what happened. And it's also, the same woman was in that first story and did not, she talked about him acting inappropriately. She didn't go into the detail of what she does in the Politico piece or with Jake Tapper on CNN when she basically
Politico
described...
broke the story, by the way.
Yeah, Politico broke the story, right. But she went into much more detail with them and Tapper. Rod from Halifax, thank you for calling.
Hello, Rod.
Hey guys, thanks so much for taking my call. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Are we getting? Sorry about that, guys. So what I'm concerned about. So I'm originally from Maine. Have friends. I'm actually friends with Hannah Pingree's husband. Went to college with him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Candidate for governor, for those who don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, sir. No worries. So a lot of the talk, I think with Plattner, he burst onto the scene so quickly. He was such an exciting person. He was unexpected.
Oops.
I think
we've lost
Janet
you.
Mills.
Oh,
sorry. I'm still here.
Okay, keep going.
So
he was unexpected.
He was really exciting. Janet Mills, I think, was very tardy getting into the race. So he really got a big jump start on the excitement build around his candidacy. And Shenna Bellows, Troy Jackson, Nirav Shah, all have been vetted really well in the primary for governor. I really think one of them will end up taking over the mantle and doing really well against Susan Collins. They're known candidates. I think that's one of the challenges of an unknown is they're vetted only briefly by primary voters. And then as they dig deeper into the process, we see these things erupt that we weren't expecting. So I think he brought a lot of excitement, and a lot of people in Maine don't want Janet Mills. There are Democratic voters who refuse to vote for her. And I really think one of the other candidates, I think Troy Jackson will end up taking it, will be a really strong candidate.
Well, Rod, you made a really important point, which we had not thought of or made, is those among the likely candidates for this position, some of them did run for governor and have been vetted for months. While they obviously didn't win, Pingree won the nomination. That is a huge step up in terms of how much time the party has to make sure they don't make another mistake. You know, that's a very helpful kind of thing, no?
Yeah, I mean, this may turn out well. If I want to be optimistic about it, it could turn out well. Katrina in the car, thank you for calling.
Hi, Katrina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Hi, big fan.
Thank you.
Frequent caller.
Thank you.
I have been beside myself angry about this candidate for a long time, especially 1 month, if not the second we heard about his Nazi tattoo, right? And I'm sorry, there's no professional vetting that could have gone on that would miss any of these things. But what concerns me the most is that, to me, it speaks to this division on the Democratic left-leaning side of politics between quote-unquote leftists and, more traditional progressive Democrats. Like, I identify as a pragmatic, progressive feminist. This guy has concerned me for a month, and that it took this long to implode is heartbreaking to me, and I just wish, yes, the Supreme Court, the Senate matters, which is why it should have mattered last year.
That's a good point.
Right.
We got to go, Katrina. You know what? I just thank you for your call. You know what just occurred to me?
What?
We may find out down the line that people did inside knew more. When Swalwell was forced to resign from Congress and withdraw from the California governor's race that he was leading, what did we learn? That tons of people in the House knew what his reputation was with women, and they chose to overlook it. So maybe we'll learn that Democrats decided to ignore this too. I don't know.
Well, the Wall Street Journal reported last month, according to the New York Times, according to the Wall Street Journal, Plattner's top strategist did not want to spring for a thorough background check, which can take weeks and cost around $20,000. So we did an expedited, cheaper review within days.
Edgar B. Herrick III, you have 30 seconds to tell us what you're doing on that wonderful show of yours. What's up?
On the hopeful note that you're on, we're going to continue with it and talk about how AI is coming for everyone's jobs.
Oh, great.
No, but in all honesty, a little bit of cooling in the doom speak from the highest halls of AI folks. Maybe it's not going to be as bad as they say. We'll talk about that with our with our AI panel. And also driverless cars coming to Massachusetts, ? We've got a new Curiosity Desk video about that. We'll hear a little of that during the show today.
Fabulous. We'll be listening. Thank you, Edgar.
Yeah, thank you all for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thanks to everybody who came down to the Boston Public Library.
Thanks
really
for Algae
appreciate it.
joining us.
Thank you very much for Ryan Landry coming up from the algae pool in Washington. We really appreciate his turning up for us. Tomorrow, I want to thank our crew first. Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Ariana Gonzalez, Charlie Desjardins, our engineer John the Claw Parker, our executive producer Jane Bologna, our BPL staff Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, our security team Darius and Derek, our hosts at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Tomorrow, we're here at the Boston Public Library with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu from noon to 1 for another edition of Ask the Mayor. You can come down here and ask her question in person if you want, plus our national security expert Juliette Kayyem and congressional candidate Patrick Roth with an R. He is running against Stephen Lynch, the Boston congressman, longtime Boston congressman. Stay tuned for the Curiosity Desk right after us.
By the way, with an R does not mean he's a Republican, if that's what people think it means. That's a pronouncer. Just
oh, my God. I thought that meant he was a Republican.
No, he could be, but he isn't. He's running in the Democratic primary against incumbent Stephen Lynch.
Thank you very much for that. Stay tuned. Okay. Oh, well. Another day, another blooper. Okay, the Curiosity Desk is right after us.
We use that sound effect for everything. Bye.
The Culture Show is after that. Thank you for tuning in.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Boston Speaker Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, war photographer Lindsay Addario, and former U.S. Ambassador to China Nicholas Burns. BostonSpeakers.org.
And Cambridge Trust, a division of Eastern Bank, dedicated to helping individuals and businesses pursue their financial goals with a full range of banking and wealth management services. Learn more at cambridgetrust.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herrick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, is AI really coming for your job? Since the technology began on its path to ubiquity, the message to corporate workers has been, get ready to be replaced. But now, some of the biggest names in tech are singing a different tune. Rewriting their code? We'll work on the pun. Meanwhile, there's growing conversation around AI companies sharing their wealth with the public. Everyone from Bernie Sanders to OpenAI's Sam Altman have an idea as to how. It's all on the board for a special labor-minded edition of our AI news panel. Then, Provincetown has been called the gayest town in America. Just a few hours north, the coastal enclave Ogunquit has been dubbed the P-Town of Maine. Our question, how exactly did these two seaside towns become LGBT destinations? It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Former presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders, one of the longest-serving independent politicians in Congress, is now urging Maine's Senate Democratic nominee Graham Plattner to drop out of the race for the Senate following an explosive sexual assault allegation. Here's NPR's Barbara Sprunt.
Plattner denies the allegation, but said in a video statement he's taking time to reflect on the best path forward. That reflection comes with a ticking clock. The deadline for a nominee to withdraw is July 13th. If Plattner decides to suspend his campaign, the Maine Democratic Party will administer a process to select a new nominee by July 27th. If he doesn't suspend his campaign by the 13th, there's no option to select a new nominee. The Maine Democratic Party is pushing for Plattner to exit as soon as possible in order to begin the new nominating process, which they've said they want to be open, transparent, and inclusive. Barbara Sprunt, NPR News, Washington.
The NATO summit is underway, and its host, Turkey, could play a more vital role in the military alliance this year. In a joint news conference with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President Trump expressed disappointment with a number of NATO allies, such as France, Italy, and Germany, who've resisted providing the U.S. full support in its war with Iran. Today, Trump cited a closer alliance with Turkey, which could lead to the resumption of sales of F-35 fighter jets.
It's a decision we're going to make. We have a very good relationship. I would think that many people, I can tell you, many people, including the people sitting right here, thinks, why wouldn't we do that? We have a better relationship with Turkey, and Turkey's been in many ways much more loyal than other countries that we think would be loyal.
But Israel strongly opposes the sale of fighter jets to Turkey. In an interview with CNN, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned that would, quote, destroy the power balance in the Middle East. While still trying to negotiate a peace deal with Iran, the Trump administration is attempting to do the same with the Russia-Ukraine war, now in its fifth year. Trump's expected to meet tomorrow with the leader of Ukraine as it remains locked in battles with Russia. Here's NPR's Charles Maines.
Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said more than 400 drones were tracked en route to the capital, with air defenses destroying most before they reached the city. While Sobyanin reported no injuries or damage in Moscow, Ukraine successfully targeted an oil facility in the Kalushskaya region to the south, as well as gas and electrical terminals in Belgorod, closer to the Ukrainian border. Those attacks came just a day after Ukraine struck Russia's largest oil refinery in Omsk, Siberia, some 1,700 miles from the front line. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to continue attacks on the Russian interior and occupied territories in an effort to bring the war home to Russians, and he says force the Kremlin into ending the war. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. For 50 years, an iconic sign for the Christmas tree shops welcome people as they cross the Sagamore Bridge onto Cape Cod. It's been a few years since the regional big box retailer shut down, but fans longing for a piece of memorabilia will now have a chance to own that sign. And it's big. GBH's Marilyn Scherer reports it's being put on the auction block.
Longtime New Englanders will remember the TV jingle for the Christmas tree shops. While the stores are closed, some of their signs remain. Habitat for Humanity Cape Cod is auctioning off the sign from the Sagamore Bridge location and another from a separate store. The proceeds will help build permanent, affordable homes for local families who live and work on the Cape. Wendy Cullinan leads the nonprofit and says the owner of the old Christmas tree shop properties offered to donate them.
He called us and said, how about the signs that say Christmas tree shop? We have two 27-foot signs that could be a fun thing. And we're like, absolutely.
The auction for the two 27-foot signs opens next Monday and closes Sunday, August 2nd. Bidding starts at $1,000. Marilyn Scherer, GBH News.
A bill that's making its way through the Massachusetts legislature would let the state use eminent domain to seize the long-vacant Norwood Hospital property. The State House News Service reports supporters see it as a step toward towards opening the hospital back up some 6 years after it first closed due to a major flood. Construction at the site to build a new hospital stopped in 2024, right in the middle of the Steward Healthcare bankruptcy fiasco. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Strawberry.me, whose career coaches offer professional support to help people get unstuck, gain clarity, and move forward, whether advancing in a current role or choosing a new direction altogether. More at strawberry.me/public.
Welcome to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, most people have pretty complicated feelings, whether they be good or bad, about AI. One place where a lot of Americans are feeling anxious is what the technology will mean for their livelihood. According to June polling from Reuters and Ipsos, 53% of Americans worry AI could put them or a loved one out of work. A topic that was once the focus of a few Chicken Littles is now on the minds of everybody, from Bernie Sanders with his idea about an AI sovereign wealth fund to the big tech oligarchs like Sam Altman, who may or may not be singing an altered tune about the impact of their work on the labor market. Of course, this is a topic that is on the minds of a number of guests I have with us today. For our latest AI news panel, with us is Boston Globe technology reporter Hiawatha Bray, Nir Eisikovits, a professor of philosophy and founding director of the Applied Ethics Center at UMass Boston, and Jay Hughes, a bioethicist, sociologist, and director of the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. Thank you all for being with us today here on the Curiosity Desk. Welcome back.
Our pleasure to be here.
All right, so I want to start with this little, I don't know if the word is changing their tune or if it's a little bit of a softening or an altering, but some of the tech oligarchs seem to be, kind of moving away from what some people might have described as being prophets of doom in terms of how much disruption this technology is going to bring, especially to the labor market. And maybe they're saying maybe it's not going to be as bad as we thought. We hear Anthropic, OpenAI. I think Mark Zuckerman at Meta recently said, well, I'm looking at it, I think it's going to create more jobs than it's going to take away. So as we see the sort of cooling on the job loss front in terms of rhetoric, do we gentlemen think that this is something that is them looking at numbers like I just read, which is public opinion is not great when it comes to fears about AI, or is this something real? Are they really looking as this technology is developing and saying, like, actually, maybe we were out in front of this a little bit too much in our predictions?
Well, when you combine it with the fact that their doomer talk led to the administration suddenly waking up and deciding that models needed to be approved before they're released, it's like, oh my God, maybe our doomer talk has actually led to the kind of regulatory oversight that we didn't actually want.
Well, I'm not sure, because they often talk as if they do want some of this regulatory oversight, and it depends on how closely they can get into bed with government. And if you can, the whole idea that companies don't want to be regulated, that's not necessarily true. If they can be regulated the way they want to be regulated, it's actually a great way to keep competitors down. And so there's good reason to think that if they can get the right kind of regulation, they'd be perfectly happy to have the government looking over.
If you can get the government
shoulders
to buy your stock, especially.
We'll get into that in a bit.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Hiawatha.
No, I was just going to quickly say about the job thing. There were actually two things going on, and one of them is the realization by many companies, hey, we really shouldn't have laid off all those people.
Yeah.
You have the stories about Ford and IBM, among others, bringing people back because they suddenly kind of noticed that while AI can do some parts of the job, they can't do all of the jobs. Go over to MIT. They've done great research on this, where they actually took the trouble to say a job is made up of separate tasks. Which of these tasks can AI do? In some cases, they can do like 30 or 50%. In many cases, they can only do like 10%. And you can't go laying people off then. You have to wait and see whether they can really do the job.
Yeah, there's a seed of truth in what they're saying insofar as, in addition to not being able to do all the tasks, there's just some inbuilt uncertainty about what it will do to jobs in the larger economy. We're seeing an impact on tech and coding, but usually employment, like economy-wide scale impact on employment, comes when the structure of businesses changes, and that just hasn't happened yet with AI. So I think it's too early. But for context, I think you asked, is this just them sort of feeling where the wind is blowing of public opinion? I think that's a big part of it too. Part of the context here is that all of a sudden you hear Sam Altman wanting to give 5% of the company to the government.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Or $500 million for job retraining. This, I am a student of history. This feels a little bit like the monarchists in the 18th century, right before the French Revolution. Wanting to say,
here's some ideas.
We love constitutional government.
Would you like some cake?
One thing that I'm sort of not quite clear on in my head, I wonder if you all have thoughts on this. So, example, like is the cost benefit analysis of this, and what we know and we don't know about how much it costs to use AI in terms of how much savings that's going to bring to a company. So if we look at what's happened with Amazon, right? So Amazon recently, we have this term because everything's maxing these days, right? So we had token maxing, which was, this idea that, at Amazon, they were like, we want you using AI, and they were evaluating performance based on how much AI was being used. Well, no surprise, employees who are smart said, well, I'm going to use it a lot. Then Amazon has looked at this and said, when everybody's using it this much, it's actually costing us a lot of money. So they've backed off on that. So when these bigger companies in particular are looking at this, what do we know and not know about whether there are savings to be had here, or if this technology really is just inherently going to be too expensive for many of these tasks?
Well, we clearly know that these guys are going to have to come up with ways to pay for all this stuff. Everybody is shoveling money into these businesses, and at some point the price is, it's like streaming television. When it first came along, it cost next to nothing to stream TV.
Right.
But then if you were reading carefully, you saw that companies like Netflix were spending like $16 or $18 billion a year making TV shows. You knew the price was going to go up. That's what's happening with AI. People are spending insane amounts of money on it, and their businesses in particular are seeing their costs go up as the cost of these tokens are going up, and they're cutting back.
But that's just now. I mean, there was an over-enthusiasm in the last year or so. A lot of jobs were cut. But now there's retrenchment. But we're still in the direction of travel. We still see like IBM committing to automation teams and giving billions of dollars and setting up advisories on how to do that. And the international competitiveness means that Chinese models, which are free, are still being used all around the world and could potentially be used in the United States as well. And therefore, you wouldn't have to pay these exorbitant prices to Anthropic.
Why are the Chinese models free? Before we get to you, Nir, why are the Chinese models free? Is it just simply the way their economy works and the state is paying for it over there?
Well, it's part of their global industrial strategy, I think, that they can't compete in the same way at the leading edge that these other models are, but they can be like 2 months behind and give everybody something for free.
And you have got to remember, I mean, this is, well, put it this way, the internet is American. Everything about the internet, all of its core functions, except I guess the World Wide Web, which was British, were invented by Americans. And it brings American cultural and political assumptions to bear on the distribution of information. That's why everything on the internet is so oriented toward free speech and free everything. What happens in an AI world where China's models of how the AI ought to work become the global standard? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make Chinese AI the global standard, and it ain't going to look American. And in some ways, that's going to be a real problem.
Just 2 notes of caution about the sort of economic meaning of AI. Number one, it hasn't yet showed up in the productivity numbers across most of the economy.
And what do you mean by that?
What I mean is you can't yet prove that it improves the bottom line of most companies.
So it's like, it's sort of like the feeling is, I guess people are probably working more efficiently, but we don't really know that to be true yet.
It is more vibe than not vibe at this point.
It's vibes.
And it is very popular vibes, and the vibes are causing a huge amount of, fear of missing out, and that is driving adoption. And, it took the internet a while to show up in productivity numbers as well several decades ago. But it just hasn't yet. It's too early, number one. Number two, and this is like not talked about a lot, there's a huge collective action problem. So even if a specific company did save money by automating, right? And therefore fired people. Now, on economy scale base, you have less people making money, and as a result, decreasing demands for the stuff that all the other companies are selling.
Right.
Right. So then, I mean, that's a real bottom line problem, which just doesn't show up for any particular company.
Yeah.
But you know what we do see is that the latest jobs report showed that we're at the lowest proportion of Americans in employed labor since the 1980s. So that's the kind of figure that I try to pay attention to. Yes, we see these pockets of evidence of automation of particular jobs, like the filmmaking industry is in severe crisis. The Chinese filmmaking industry is collapsed because everyone's going to AI filmmaking. So there are these pockets of evidence, and then we see the retrenchment. But at the top line figure, we are seeing fewer Americans in employment.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Hiawatha Bray, Nir Eisikovits, and Jay Hughes. This is our AI news panel. We're focused today on labor and economics. Well, let's talk about, this sort of wider impact on the economy, and one idea or series of ideas, and we've hinted at this, that are being floated. And I find it interesting because they're being floated by everybody from Bernie Sanders to Gavin Newsom to Steve Bannon to Sam Altman, this idea of sort of universal basic capital or some sort of scheme. And I say scheme more in the British sense here, not to say that it's necessarily a negative thing, but some sort of scheme where individuals or the government, as the proxy for individuals, is going to have some sort of ownership stake in AI. And therefore, it sort of maybe alleviates some of the concerns about job losses and sort of enriches your average person in some form or fashion as this technology grows. What do we make of where we're at with this? Is this something that's definitely going to happen in some form or fashion, and everybody knows it, so they're all starting to float their plan?
Well, the fact that everyone from Bernie to Trump agrees on the basic idea of that we should have a sovereign wealth fund and that we should be partially nationalizing some companies and putting that in and getting dividends back from that the fact that there's broad agreement on this idea means we're probably going to get something, and Trump's already got an executive order for a sovereign wealth fund. And by fiat, he has partially nationalized Intel, 10%. He gave U.S. Steel the mandate that he wanted the government to have a controlling interest in U.S. Steel. So we're already doing it. And the question is, Bernie says, okay, well, if we're going to do that, let's do it 50% so that we have controlling interest and we get this substantial $1,000 per American per year dividend back out of it. Trump's vision is a little bit more fiddling with the knobs.
I think it's a dreadful idea to have the government owning stakes in these corporations because of the possibilities of corruption and inefficiency. I mean, you now have for example, these people in these businesses are in bed with government, and they can count on them for less strict regulation. They can count on them to turn a blind eye to abusive practices, and they can be protected from potential competitors as well. I mean, I'm more open to the whole suggestion that you might pass a law requiring them to set aside, say, 10% of their stock and give it directly to people. That might make sense.
An index fund would be a better idea than particular stocks, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or something like that, where the stocks would not be held by the government, but by citizens
by
themselves.
actual humans,
right?
People.
Who aren't in a position to use their stock ownership to distort the economy in major ways. If you put it in the hands of the government, you're asking for trouble.
Although people don't necessarily always make the best decisions with lump sums of money.
Yeah, but when they make a bad decision, it's not going to be the U.S. government making the bad decision and wrecking everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to say in that context that there are other examples of this in other places. Norway has a sovereign wealth fund that reinvests the profits from the oil industry into healthcare, education, and other basic services. And
State of Alaska has something like that.
Norway owns the majority of the economy.
Right. Alaska has dividends. But to Hiawatha's point, Norway has a social democratic tradition of government involvement in the economy, and it's okay to, make a little bit less money or to tax a little bit higher so that you have a, basic quality of life. We don't have that tradition.
I think about the telephone industry. One of the reasons why, to be fair, the Bell monopoly in many respects did an excellent job. They kept their end of the bargain back in those days. But innovation, new entrance into the phone market, new technologies, they were stifled because they had no economic incentive whatsoever to bring them to market, and companies that might want to bring them to market couldn't. That's why MCI had to, everybody's forgotten MCI, the company that broke open the long distance monopoly.
Yeah.
It used to be you actually had to pay extra to call the other side of the country, and they helped stop that.
One point of context that I do think matters here. What's driving all of this talk about sovereign wealth funds?
Well, what's your take?
My take is that, for example, there was a Quinnipiac poll from a couple of months ago that a huge majority of Americans don't believe that AI is being developed with their interest in mind. So my take is that there's a general collapse of public trust in AI that is being capitalized on and understood and is probably quite justified, which is sort of driving this. I do think this is related to the kind of protests that you saw in college graduations, the demonstrations that you saw in the streets of London in front of the offices of the labs. People don't believe that it's a technology that's being developed to benefit them.
I think that one of the things that may have scared these guys really bad is the sort of thing I'm writing about right now out in Westfield, where there is this huge backlash against the building of a data center.
Which is what's going to be needed to bring the cost down.
It is one of the most amazing public movements I've seen in years, almost out of nowhere.
More than half of all data centers that have been proposed around the country have been stalled because of these kinds of opposition.
It's been explosive. People everywhere just saying, we're sick of these things.
So on a more philosophical note, when we talk about whether it be a sovereign wealth fund or some sort of ownership stake scheme, I mean, one of the things that we hear, I think most people, the average person who's interacting with AI is interacting with an LLM, right? Like in some form or fashion. And I think that there is a growing notion among people that really understand the fact that to a certain extent, all of these things are being trained on the entirety of stuff that's on the internet, which includes everything that you have done.
We should be getting a taste because it's trained on us, all of our collective labor. So I think that that's a very strong argument. But I think the other part of the problem, though, is that there's a natural argument for nationalizing a monopoly or turning it into a public utility. I'm not sure it's clear that these are monopolies yet.
Because there's a number of companies in the space and they're all competing with each other.
Exactly. So it might be nationalizing McDonald's, and there's still a bunch, Burger King out there.
Yeah, there's other fast food.
One comment about that Bernie Sanders argument that it's being trained on our intellectual property, and so in some way we should be getting a stake. I mean, it's a good argument. There's a caveat. First of all, it's not the innovation is the interface that manipulates the data that is trained on our intellectual property. So that's a big part of the technology too. And the problem with that argument as the basis for AI regulation is what happens when it starts working primarily on synthetic data, which is coming, right? What happens when it's not using training data that is coming from our
It still has an enormous impact on our lives and it's a national security threat. And those are two very strong arguments.
That's the argument I would make.
It's still resting on a base.
I was going to say, and at some point in the development, you still make the argument that at some point all of our collective data was an important piece of the puzzle to get us to where we got to.
But how about this? In addition to that, it is already destabilizing the way we do relationships. It's already destabilizing our capacity to think critically.
That's why Nir wants it nationalized, so that it slows it down.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. The center-right argument for nationalizing is it's not going to work.
And when we say synthetic data, what do we mean? We mean that it no longer needs our data, that it's developed enough that it's...
Give you an example just from the world of robotics. We're moving into the era of what is being called physical AI. And this is really important. One of the critical problems with bringing like humanoid robots into the real world is that we haven't figured out how to teach a robot to understand how things feel and how they're shaped and how you interact with things of different feels and different shapes. And now they're working on that, giving robots ever greater abilities to, for example, sense what they're grabbing and then sending them into controlled environments where they manipulate stuff like a child learning how to play with toys. And that's going to become an ever more important part of this as these robots learn this. And it's all AI driving the robots and teaching them, here's how you pick up a ball. Here's how you pick up a box.
It's already happening, by the way.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
The humanoid robotics companies, the robots are remotely operated, and the whole idea is it's
training, right?
Collecting physical data from the world.
Yeah. That's right. Wow. And that's going to be the next layer with which they're trained, and they're not getting that information from a library because libraries of information like that do not exist.
But they get created pretty quickly. Your kid has to throw his food off of the high chair a dozen times before he learns about gravity, but the robot only has to do it a couple times.
That's right.
And then
all the robots know, right? Yeah. It's the Borg.
Right, exactly.
It's the Borg.
That's a very good point. Once one robot learns it, they all know it. That's really true.
We do need to mention, though, or to reiterate a couple of numbers. OpenAI and Anthropic are worth $1 trillion each, right? The proposals are 5%. That's like subtracting the economy of Cyprus from the economy of Switzerland. It's not such a big sacrifice. Bernie's talking about 50%. Altman is talking about 5%.
Yeah.
And then all the companies together are talking about $500 million for reinvesting in labor training. Come on, give me a break. What is that? 0.05% of 1% of
right. Well, none of which has shown any success.
Yes, I was about to say, government efforts to retrain workers are famously
the monarchists did better before the French Revolution.
Well, but I mean, one of the things I always say is I think one of the reasons why this kind of stuff is confusing and it's difficult to kind of follow this stuff for the average person is I don't think we conceptualize how vast the difference between a million and a billion and a trillion is, right? Because the words rhyme. They sort of sound the same. They're all sort of big in your mind, but the difference the difference between these, I don't think people really can conceive how vast the difference is between.
People realize a million isn't that much anymore. There are actually millions of Americans.
But do you think they realize how much more a billion is than a million, or how much more a trillion is than a billion?
Right.
Let alone a million. Right. Mm-hmm. So you're listening to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Hiawatha Bray, Nir Eisikovits, and Jay Hughes. It's our AI news panel. All on jobs, labor, economics. What about the idea of sort of like what we know right now in terms of layoffs? As you said, we're really in this totally mixed bag area right now. Some companies are saying like, "Hey, we moved too fast. We're bringing people back on."
I think everyone has acknowledged that we tend to overestimate how quickly things are going to take off in the short term and underestimate in the long term. And the question is, are we in the short term or the long term?
We're in the short term.
Yeah, I think we're still in the short term. So,
do you feel like this is moving faster, like that this is happening to a certain extent, that big decisions, things like layoffs and then rehires, that it's happening faster than it used to in the past? Like when we would see a technology emerge and companies had to react to it. I don't want to use the word panic, but it seems to me that there are very big decisions being made very quickly and then reversed and then moved in a different direction in a way that it just didn't used to be that way.
I mean, look at the whole mythos thing where you crack down on this thing because it's dangerous and then you start saying, well, maybe we can let people have it. But I mean, that's a classic example of why you're seeing such panic, because if we can take what Anthropic is saying seriously, and I think we can, you're talking about releasing AIs now that are so potentially powerful that they could literally tear apart the global economy in the wrong hands, because you could have AIs that could find zero-day exploits on countless computers all over the world and cause who knows how much havoc.
And again, China released a model that would do it for free for exactly the same thing 2 weeks later.
And they said, we can't, and you see what they said, the Chinese guy said, we cannot allow America to have this capability alone. We must be able to do it too.
And we should say that this entire whiplash action is part of what's destroying people's trust in the technology.
Yes.
And these are not just numbers on a board. When you fire somebody and then you rehire them, they say to themselves, all right, this is BS, right? Yep. And they become alienated. And so there's a cost to be paid that doesn't necessarily show up immediately on your spreadsheet.
So, some of these humanoid robots are coming with robots on their foreheads to watch you as you do your job so that it can copy what you're doing. How's that going to affect the workplace?
It's all tying into stuff even beyond this. Because what I think we're seeing are all the various consequences of living in what has become a low-trust society. We do not trust our institutions. We do not trust our leaders to do right by us. And we see that in every phase of life. And the way AI is being brought to bear in our lives is part of that. We think these guys are all out to exploit us, and there's ample evidence that that's true.
You know, one thing I think that's really important to stress here is we talk a lot about regulation. It's no longer clear that we can still regulate this in the sense that the companies may be stronger than the government. government. They have more money than the government.
And too big to
That's
fail.
right. And the AIs may even be stronger than the companies.
Yeah,
They may not let themselves.
I mean, look at what the Vatican did, by the way, with its recent AI encyclical. It went directly to the companies to convince them to have AI with a human face,
right?
More than to the government.
Well, they're the ones who are building it. They're the ones who are going to have to do it. you know?
But isn't that a good argument for nationalization?
Yeah.
If the
that
corporation
and it slows it down.
I don't understand this. Look at the United States government. Do you really want them in charge
But
of
it
AI?
depends on what democracy means. If it's just Trump's personal slush fund, no. But if it's Bernie's democratic management
We
system,
live in a supposedly democratic country where our own Congress no longer does much of anything. The key democratic institution of the U.S. government isn't working.
But the goodwill of Sam Altman isn't going to work.
Well,
either.
I know. I'm terrified because our institutions are failing us at pretty much every level.
All right.
On that note,
on
Thanks,
that note,
Hiawatha.
really quick, I
just
wonder
wanted to cheer folks up.
before you go quickly, because we only have about a minute left. Do you feel like we collectively are getting closer to having the right conversations that we should be about this? I mean, one of the things I feel like a year ago, 6 months ago, like there was this huge knowledge gap between where it seemed like places were and what the average person understood, and the kinds of conversations that were happening. When I see something like, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, for example, which seems to at least attempt to solve a number of these problems all at once, do you feel like at least the conversations that are happening are ticking in the right direction?
it's astonishing.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
astonishing. The policy is changing so quickly, and the attitudes towards policy is fantastic.
No, but look at what happened when Trump comes into office and he says, we're going to basically let everything just run wild, no regulation of AI. I actually, at the time, thought he was probably right.
Yeah.
And then everybody sat down and did their homework, and we all started saying, hey, wait a minute, we can't do that.
There is an actual rage bubbling down about this from the grassroots, and I expect that to grow. That's probably pretty bad news, but
All right.
I think it's forcing the conversations.
We'll leave it there. We've been speaking with Hiawatha Bray, Nir Eisikovits, and Jay Hughes. If you want more from Nir and Jay, check out their podcast. It's great, Prosthetic Gods, and you can always keep up with Hiawatha's reporting at the Boston Globe. He's got great stuff, so always check that out. Thank you all for being with us today.
Our pleasure.
It's been fun.
Just ahead, little queer history for you. We'll get into how Provincetown and Ogunquit, Maine came to be LGBTQ safe havens and vacation destinations. Plus, 4 things you definitely ought to know this July 7th. This is the Curiosity Desk. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Cameron McCloud of the Dallas hip-hop collective Cure for Paranoia joins us after the band's NPR Tiny Desk contest win, bringing rap, funk, and soul to a much bigger audience by way of a famously tiny desk. Plus, Jeffrey Seller, the Tony-winning producer behind Rent, Avenue Q, and Hamilton, joins us with Theater Kid, his memoir about finding his way to theater and shaping modern Broadway. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, presenting concerts at Tanglewood all summer long. Highlights include the BSO and Pops, classical soloists, and the Popular Artist Series. More at tanglewood.org.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing coverage plans for individuals, families, employers, and retirees with benefits that help you live in your moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk here on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm joined now by the one and only senior producer of the show, Aidan Connolly. Hey, Aidan.
The nick of time. Hey, Edgar. It's good to see you.
Aidan, do you like bread as a foodstuff?
I ran all the way to get here just for that. Edgar, it was like, what's a Good Will Hunting? Do you like apples?
You like apples? How do you like this bread?
Yes, I love bread, Edgar. Of course.
Do you have a favorite kind of bread?
I mean, that's the most. Oh, there's so many kinds. There's the
there's
banana
too many.
bread. You get those like moldy old bananas, make the really best stuff. I love a baguette. I love a sourdough loaf. I mean, we could do the whole 8-minute segment talking about the different breads that
So when you go to the store, though, you do buy bread, yes? Sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
I
and do you buy it sliced or do you slice it yourself at home?
If I'm going to somewhere fancy, I might get it not sliced, but generally speaking, yeah, sliced bread
Well,
is
then
how
you
it comes.
should thank Otto Rovetter.
The singer of Pearl Jam.
No. Otto Rohvetter, the jeweler turned inventor from Iowa.
Oh, was this guy invented bread or something?
No, now stay with me here. No, but this man did toil for years on a machine that could take an entire loaf of bread and slice it all at once.
Oh.
It took him 5 years to get a working prototype. And then when he did, a fire broke out. Prototype burned. All of his blueprints burned in 1917. 5 years of work down the drain.
It's like God didn't want us to have sliced bread.
I know. But this guy, true American, he kept at it. He doubled down even. And it took him to the late 20s. But he perfected a machine that both sliced the bread and then wrapped it up to preserve it. Just
like we have today,
Just like we have today, indeed. And it was on this date, today, July 7th, way back in 1928, that the very first commercial loaf of sliced bread, the brand was called Clean Made Sliced Bread, was sold in Missouri.
I wonder what happened to this clean-made sliced bread. I wonder if there's remnants of them somewhere.
Yeah, clean-made sliced bread.
You might need to put me in touch with the producer at the Curiosity Desk. We'll do a segment.
Yeah.
Edgar, because I didn't have the chance to thank him the first time around, I just want to give some credit. Of course, he's not the lead singer of Pearl Jam. Otto Rohvetter, thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you've contributed.
There you go. See, now, Aiden, I think you could say that little back and forth we just had, that was the best thing since
the last time we did this segment, Edgar. I will give it to you. That was a cool fact from this day in history.
Hey, I try.
You know me. You know I love the news. You know I love keeping up with what's current. And for that, on this day, July 7th, 2026, in news, there's only one person I want to hear from, and that is Gal Tziperman, the incomparable, wonderful, eloquent Gal Tziperman Lotan. She writes the GBH Daily Newsletter. Gal, hello.
Hello. So good to be here. Can't believe that fire almost turned that sliced bread into toast.
I know. Oh.
But
welcome, Gal.
Let's get into it. Let's kick it off with a bill we've been following in the newsletter for a while. This is a proposal to restrict teen social media use.
Oh.
Now, when you're looking to regulate how teens use the internet, you immediately run into a problem.
Right. How do you know who is a teenager and who is not?
Exactly. Yes. So Governor Maura Healey and the State House both suggested that platforms like Instagram and TikTok, all of those, all ask their users for IDs. Now, this raised some issues, as you can imagine. Digital privacy advocates said they worried about, if I upload my driver's license onto Instagram systems, will that information be safe? Will I be targeted for what I post, especially for political posts?
Yeah, I think these are fair questions to ask.
Yeah. Now the state Senate has a way around that. They passed a version of this bill that would ban certain features for everyone. So if you want things like an infinite scroll, or your social media feed, like giving you algorithmic recommendations, you'll have to prove that you're an adult, but you can still use social media networks without verifying your identity if you'd like.
Okay, well, I'm sure you'll keep an eye on what's happening with that as it develops. What else do you have for us? Anything possibly in the world of sports?
A couple things in the world of sports,
yes. Let's go.
So Celtics player Jaylen Brown is leaving Boston after 10 years.
Yes. You're excited.
I'm a
Philly
76ers
boy.
fan.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's where he's headed to Philadelphia.
It's hard, though. It's hard.
But he's been here for 10 years since he was 19, and his work went way beyond the court. Yeah, he launched an initiative called the Boston Exchange to fight wealth inequality. His Juice Foundation gives more opportunities to young people, and a summer program with the MIT Media Lab called Bridge Boston.
That's right, yeah.
And on top of that, this week, the Chief Impact Officer of the Boys and Girls Club of Boston said that he found time to just come in and hang out with the kids there. He'd ask them how they're doing, what's going on in their lives, things like that. So they said they'll really miss having him around.
Yeah, just like a massive figure, on and off the court, as the cliche goes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Also, in people using sports for good, there was a group that ran from Beverly, the town on the North Shore, all the way to Fenway Park in Boston to raise money for Venezuela, which got hit by 2 major earthquakes last week.
Yeah. Wow.
That's 100K, about 62 miles.
Whoa, it's like almost 3 marathons.
Yes,
wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. And here's organizer Manuel Rendon talking to GBH's Megan Smith.
Surely that's not what they sound like.
No, sorry.
All right, let's see if
they understand that nation was not devastating only for the earthquake, but what killed people are the infrastructure, are all the buildings, and those are decades of building structure that are not up to standards. That's what's been happening in Venezuela for the last 3 decades.
Yeah, so very, tragic and difficult times in Venezuela. The money that they raised went to the Boston Foundation's Massachusetts United for Venezuela Fund, and that's already raised about $100,000.
$100,000 is huge.
Yeah.
And I love these, like, the way that these sports stories can, like, really, people making a positive change. It warms my heart. It's really sweet, and I'm glad it was in your newsletter. Gal, do you have one more story for us?
Yeah, so the 4th of July has come and gone.
Yeah.
The last World Cup match is Thursday. France versus Morocco, the last local World Cup match here in Foxborough. But there's one more thing to look forward to.
I think I know what you're going to
Yeah.
Don't get too swept away here.
Yeah, so this is Sail Boston, the Tall Ships event on the Boston Harbor.
There it is.
Yeah, opening
Okay,
ceremonies are Friday.
Ships.
The parade of sail is Saturday, and between Saturday evening and Wednesday, anyone can board these ships and see what it's like on them.
Very cool. All right, well, that's Gal Tziperman Lotan. She writes our email newsletter, GBH Daily. You can subscribe. It is absolutely free. You just go to gbh.org/daily.
Aiden Gal, thank you both.
Thank you so much.
By the way, in a future edition of her 4 Things to Know newsletter, Gal just might include updates about Boston paving the way for driverless cars. Think those Waymo taxis you might have seen. They are all over the city, mapping in preparation. That is the subject of our latest Curiosity Desk video episode, which just dropped today on the GBH News YouTube channel. Here's a little taste.
The roads can be a little crazy. The turns can be fast.
They're not intuitive at all. They're not gridded out or anything. There's like a lot of jaywalking.
The splits, the tunnels.
The construction messes up GPS in your car.
You wonder how well a robot could navigate that if like a number of the people here are struggling to navigate that. So I don't know. I'm still nervous about it.
And also, how will they do in the snow? Well, again, you can check out that video. It's at youtube.com/GBH News. Coming up, how does a town become a gayborhood? We'll explore how 2 coastal New England towns came to be recognized as enclaves for the LGBTQ community. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
If it matters in Massachusetts, it's on In Common. This weekend in Northampton, a little bit off the beaten path, on the outskirts of Salem, from across Massachusetts and around New England. With reporting from 3 newsrooms across the Commonwealth, you'll get a statewide perspective you won't find anywhere else. What's happening, why it matters, and how it connects us, from the Berkshires to the Bay. Listen to In Common, Saturdays at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Standish Village in Dorchester's Lower Mills, providing assisted living residents with programs designed to help seniors stay sharp, social, and independent. Learn more at standishvillage.com/programs. And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, committed to simplifying college planning for families over 45 years with trusted guidance, interactive tools, step-by-step videos, and more. MEFA.org.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, throughout the U.S., there are communities referred to lovingly as gayborhoods. These are places that are particularly welcome to the LGBTQ community. That, of course, includes some here in New England. For decades, Provincetown, Massachusetts has embraced its identity as a gay cultural hub. Meanwhile, the main resort town of Ogunquit has national recognition as a gay enclave. But how does a city or a town become a haven for the queer community? And how do we document and preserve the history of these places when people have not always been free to be themselves? Here to talk about that and more, we are joined by 2 guests over Zoom. Charlotte Tragard is the museum curator at the Ogunquit Heritage Museum, and Adam Golub is the creative director of the Generations Project, which is a living archive of LGBTQ plus stories in Provincetown and beyond. Charlotte, Adam, welcome to the Curiosity Desk. Great to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks. Thank you.
So, I mean, obviously, we could probably sit here and talk for 4 hours about the history of these places and how, sort of answering the question that I just asked, which is like, how does this happen? But, when we look at these two communities, I wonder if you can give me a little bit of a thumbnail sketch about how these communities did become gay havens. How did it work in Provincetown? Is it something that happened slowly over time? Is it something that was intentional? I mean, what do we know, Adam?
You could postulate that Provincetown has over a century of important LGBT history. At the turn of the century, there was so much arts and culture funneling through Provincetown between Paris and Manhattan and the Provincetown Players and the birthplace of American theater. And wherever arts and bohemia seem to reside or end up, a lot of gay and lesbian people seem to also be there. There was a train until the 1950s that took you all the way to Macmillan Pier. And there's something about the geography of Provincetown being at the very tip of Cape Cod. Also, the Azorian and Portuguese migrants were also kind of people that ended up at the end of the world. And there was a sort of end of the line, rough and tumble feeling about people coming through Provincetown in the early 20th century. But, like every kind of historical claim, it's really difficult to sort of nail something down and say, this is why this happens this way.
Charlotte, sort of same question for Ogunquit. I mean, does when you hear Adam kind of talk about, the history of Provincetown and some of the reasons why we can postulate why, does that resonate with your understanding of the history of Ogunquit?
Absolutely. Artist colony in the late 19th century, early 20th. We too can claim, early summer theater and all that good stuff. I think artists on a whole, you don't have to be a painter. You could be a photographer, an author, etc. Tend to be fluid, tend to not constrain themselves. So they are just more willing to experiment and live their truth, if you will.
Yeah. I wonder, I mean, it's interesting. I was going to ask, and you sort of touched on it, Adam, when it comes to Provincetown, about the geographic location. And you have, as you said, with Provincetown, it's at the tip of Cape Cod. Ogunquit is a coastal town. There's a certain sort of level of remoteness to both of those, but yet they're also in the orbit of a large urban center like Boston. And is that a piece of the puzzle here, like being close to a major metropolitan center? Does that make a difference in any of this, in your estimation?
Well, I mean, there's like economic vibrancy that comes from attracting tourism in a lot of situations. And Mary Heaton Vorse, in her book, Time in the Town, she was this kind of proto-feminist figure that was really prominent in Provincetown in the early 20th century. Talks about the hordes of Bostonians that were coming in on the ferry to Provincetown in the summertime. So there's kind of a stimulus of sort of financial resource and capital coming into this place. There's people who kind of wash ashore in this remote location, but there is kind of, and continues to be today, a kind of economic relationship with the cities that I think is important. But yeah, actually, Provincetown has always absorbed people from very remote parts of the United States, and specifically from the Northeast.
Interesting.
Not only from Boston. People roll in from Indiana and Iowa and Maine and other places. It's because I think that people in cities tend to have an alternative, even though actually that, as you said, like acceptability or acceptance of same-sex relationships has really shifted around and moved over the course of it's also not linear. It's not like there was just all of the last 100 years there was not acceptance. There were sort of ebbs and flows around those relationships to things at different times. I also wanted to say really briefly that I feel like that the way that we think in modernity about sort of sexual and gender categories is also quite modern, and that there are ways in which people sort of spoke about themselves and their identities really differently in the 19th and the 20th century. So trying to sort of reconstitute gay history through the lens of the present is a little bit complicated sometimes because people didn't talk about themselves exactly the same way.
Yeah. So I mean, Charlotte, that obviously must be something. I mean, you're both you both do work that is about documenting history in part. Like what is the sort of, I guess, opportunity and challenge of that when to hear Adam talk about it? The idea that our language for this has changed, the idea that we don't speak about it the way we did in the past, and yet these are places where that story that of the 1900s and the early 20th century is a big important part of the history of the place. How do you deal with that, Charlotte?
Well, in not speaking about it, I think there was a lot that was unspoken, which forgive me, I need to sideline. It keeps freezing. I don't know if it's just me, so I'm not hearing. I heard almost none of what Adam just said. I apologize.
I see.
So if I repeat, I apologize. I just think you would have two women owning a tea house or two men owning an antique house. And I'm talking 1910, 1920. And nobody ever got married. Nobody ever had a wife or a husband. So I think it was just assumed and nobody, made us think about it or cared, if you will.
Does it take, I mean, in your estimation, I mean, one of the things, Charlotte, you're pointing out, this idea that, along the way you have, two women owning a tea house or two men owning a restaurant. Are there sort of key figures along the way that help the evolution of these places? Adam, in Provincetown, are there people that you look at and without whom things may not have evolved the way they did in Provincetown?
Oh gosh, it's so interesting because it's hard to if you Prescott. We just had a show in Provincetown where we were talking about the Moors restaurant, which was like an old Portuguese restaurant that was open through the early 2000s, but was serving all the waiters there were gay and everybody was gay, but it was mostly a Portuguese family restaurant from the 50s through the aughts. And Prescott Townsend had a house that was on the other side of the moors, and Prescott Townsend was the founder of the Boston chapter of the Mattachine Society, which was the earliest homophile organization in the United States, sort of in and around the Stonewall era. There was something, but before the Stonewall era, there was something called the Mattachine Society that was in New York, Boston, San Francisco, Los Angeles. But yeah, again, it's like it's interesting when you're in a place that everyone is kind of trying to get to the end of the line. Everybody is kind of contributing in this kind of almost spontaneous way to the kind of generalized atmosphere of Bohemia at a certain point in the history of the town. There were painters that came and set up painting schools like Hans Hofmann and the Hawthorne Barn. And these were happening, around World War I, II. Like I said, the Provincetown Players had their first playhouse. And this is, something that was considered the birthplace of American theater. And the other place where the Provincetown Players were presenting their work was in Manhattan, in downtown Manhattan. So there was this pipeline between New York and Provincetown that felt like this kind of direct line between the sort of downtown New York art scene and this little kind of fishing village on the end of Cape Cod.
I wonder in both of these towns, the HIV/AIDS epidemic and crisis of the 1980s, had huge impact in both of these places, and I wonder, as you look at it, through the lens of history in your work, How do you see how that did or didn't impact the development of these places and how they are today?
I think that they were safe havens, actually. I mean, I was very much alive in the 80s and aware, and in my late teens and early 20s, there was never any closed doors or, homos get out, you're killing us, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It was, there's always been the Franny Peabody, and it was a understanding that it wasn't a gay problem. It was a universal problem, and you can't, wag your fingers at a certain person to say this is your fault. You've got to go. So I think it was a safe haven.
Adam?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, something changed on my phone. I really think that it's important to think of all relate to the modern gay identity as tracing back to the AIDS epidemic, and specifically very much in Provincetown. If you look at the old Advocate, which was like what the local newspaper, it changed its name at a certain point, but there's Advocate archives in Provincetown Library from the mid-ish 1800s. The first explicit mention of gay people in Provincetown in the local newspaper happens during the AIDS epidemic. And it happens specifically because they're afraid that it's going to impact tourism. And so you can trace the kind of mainstream, like as soon as there's good, solid categorical language for certain kinds of identities, it can enter the mainstream, and then it can become this sort of, it's the sort of source of the political arm or wing of the movement that hit the mainstream. And because it was in this, because ACT UP and all these organizations were dealing with, and in Provincetown specifically, there was a lot of tumult because thousands of people were coming from all around the Northeast and the world just to die in Provincetown, to be surrounded by their community. It just shined this incredible light on that specific categorical identity in this specific place in the mainstream consciousness, really for the first time.
We're going to have to leave it there. We've been speaking with Charlotte Tragard from the Ogunquit Heritage Museum and Adam Golub from the Generations Project about the history of Ogunquit and Provincetown. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Jared Bone is with me in studio. Jared, you were just in Provincetown, and I will toot your horn for you for an excellent special episode of The Culture Show.
Well, thank you. It was very fun to take the show on the road, especially in arts-rich Provincetown, as you were just hurrying. As you were just hearing.
We were just hurrying, indeed. Well, speaking of The Culture Show, what do you have on the show today?
Imari Paris Jeffries is here. He's going to be talking about the wave of progressive candidates who are sweeping the Democratic incumbents out right now, or a small wave. We'll talk about what this really means, especially as it's tied back to Martin Luther King Jr. and his economic policies, which don't often get discussed. But of course, Imari is president and CEO of Embrace Boston, so we'll talk about that with him. Also, Cure for Paranoia is here. They are the winners of the Tiny Desk contest by NPR, which sent them out on the road. They're at the Sinclair tonight, so before you see them or get your tickets, they're on the show to talk about that.
Excellent.
And we have Jeffrey Seller, who is a major Broadway producer. He did Rent, Avenue Q, In the Heights.
Oh, a couple of shows people might have heard. Oh, okay. Wow.
Major blockbusters, major Pulitzer Prize winners. He has a new memoir out called Theater Kid, which is a pretty riveting read, taking you behind the scenes, but also his own life stories. So we'll talk about all of that.
Excellent stuff. That's Jared Bone and The Culture Show coming your way in just about 2 minutes, so you're not going to want to go anywhere. As for us, that about does it for now. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. Our intern is Mukta Dharmapurakar. Patty Daniels and Jamie Bologna make our lives a day at the beach. Our engineer is John LaClaw Parker. Special thanks today to Andrew Massawa and Cullen Cockerell. We will be right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. As always, if you go to the website and you have a question, something you're curious about that you'd like us to answer, go ahead and pop it into that handy-dandy form. We love to hear from you. We've also got that podcast version of the show, so if you want to check that out, check it out wherever it is you get your podcasts. All right, that's it. Until next time, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Peabody Essex Museum, Salem's destination for authentic witch city lore and witch trials history since 1799. Ticket information and more at PEM.org.
Using dramatic reconstruction, declassified astronaut audio, and film archive, join Apollo 11 on its historic journey to the moon. Don't miss 8 Days to the Moon and Back, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, the Party Crashers, how a tidal wave of progressive candidates are sweeping Democratic incumbents out to sea and rattling establishment politicians to the core. Imari Paris Jeffries joins us to talk about the vision they're offering, what voters are responding to, and how their messages reach back to the moral urgency of Martin Luther King Jr. Then the Dallas hip-hop collective Cure for Paranoia beat out thousands of competitors to win NPR's Tiny Desk Contest with their song No Brainer, a therapeutic blast of rap, funk, and soul. Frontman Cameron McCloud joins us as the band brings its victory lap to the Sinclair. And Jeffrey Seller, the Tony-winning producer behind Rent, Avenue Q, In the Heights, and Hamilton, joins us with Theater Kid, his memoir about how an adopted boy with a hardscrabble life outside Detroit found his way to theater and became a force behind many of Broadway's generation-defining musicals. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. We're kicking things off with our recurring feature AI Actual Intelligence, where we tap into the most interesting thinkers in our region for their insights and observations, which are algorithm-free. We're joined now by Imari Paris Jeffries, President and CEO of Embrace Boston and one of the co-chairs of Everyone 250. He joins us every month. Welcome back. Great to see you as always.
Great seeing you, and it was great to see you a couple days ago on the 4th. So it's Everyone 250. What happens? We're in the 250 now.
We're in the 250, and so all the things that we've been talking about, all the history that we have been dissecting as a means to understand the present and the future, now it gets employed, right?
Yeah, and yeah. It does. For us on E250, not all of the markers are installed, and so we still have a few unveilings that are happening. We are doing 22 of them, and so some of them are happening, but as far as the big fireworks show of the 250, and we were just talking about that on offline. We're in it, so now it's time to build on the next 250, or at least lead up to Boston 400. So I'm wondering, what do we do now?
In Salem 400 we have this year.
Salem 400.
We're not supposed to be talking about this at all, but while we're on the subject, because I was thinking all through the weekend about the next 50th celebration, which I probably won't be here for, but the drone show that was on the Esplanade, wasn't that extraordinary? And as you're talking, it just makes me realize we're seeing the future now with a drone show that is mesmerizing.
It was phenomenal, and what we were talking about online is, were we, old timey in the sense we were comparing drones, which were amazing because of the configurations and the way they were dimming and lighting them up, and it was amazing to see, a musketeer, the Constitution, the cityscape,
Bunker
Hill Monument, just forming in front of your eyes, and they were larger than life. And then when the show concluded, then you had I'm going to say old school fireworks show. And, I had an affinity to that. And, and it was just, kapow and bang and different colors and like, wow and ooh. And so, you had the best of both worlds. And I think that the time for both of the shows were about the same amount of time that the historic fireworks show went on. But it's different, and we might see the future. And so maybe by the 275th, there might not be fireworks. It might be just all drones.
So you're counting on one in 25 years. So I don't have to think that I won't be around in 50 years.
We'll make it.
Hopefully make 25 years.
Yeah, we'll make 25 years.
Maybe if they did 290th, I could make it.
Yeah, we might not. I don't know.
Okay.
They might be willing us out there or something, or our consciousness. If you watch Black Mirror, we might be in some sort of like androids like watching it.
Exactly. Well, the reason the main topic of discussion today is not the drone show, but I would implore people, I think, as you would, if you have a chance to see it, you can't really explain it till you see it, but floating over the Charles, it was incredible and massive. But one of the things we really want to talk to you about today is the string of progressive candidate victories that we see underway right now. And it seems to be, at least in primary season, shifting the political landscape. What do you see taking shape right now, especially with what's just happened in New York and the Mondami effect?
Yeah, on the 4th, I had the opportunity at Faneuil Hall to be in conversation with Ta-Nehisi Coates, and that was part of the 4th celebration. And interestingly enough, that was one of the things that we were talking about was, how do we think about governance and leadership and the next generation? And when we think about who are the leaders who have to make decisions for right now, who then have to steward those decisions for people who have to live with the consequences of those decisions. And I think what we're witnessing is a wave of elections where we're seeing candidates say, hey, we want to respond to the present, and we want to elect people who are thinking about the future as well. And so New York, Colorado, those are some of those leaders who are thinking about the present and are, dare I say, younger leaders in some cases who are going to be around to steward the decisions of their elections, their governance decisions for the future.
Well, it belies what a lot of the pundits tell us. I was just listening to somebody, I cannot remember who it was talking on one of the Sunday morning talk shows, making the point, and I think we've all observed this, that with changing administrations, you have lots of bluster and you have lots of noise. We're in one of those administrations right now, and that's typically followed by a more quiet time in politics. But if we see this group of democratic socialists gaining ground and really rattling the system, the pendulum is not going to swing back into a quiet time necessarily.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this several times on the show, and me being a person who built public art, and one of the pieces of public art is the Embrace, dedicated to Dr. and Mrs. King, and one of the things that Dr. King was responsible for was the Poor People's Campaign, and Johnson is associated with King and the Great Society programs. We're in a different time. We just came out of the pandemic. There's AI, there's technology, there's social media. We're in a different time. This is not just a pendulum swing. There are a lot of things at play. Earlier this week, it was 90 degrees. I mean, we were in a heat wave. I'm in the studio with a jacket on. It's chilly. It's going to be 90 by the end of the week. We are in different times. And so it is a moment where we need our government to step in. We are in a great society time, right? And so I think what we're seeing is people electing elected officials who are thinking about what can our government do to directly intervene with what citizens need. We're seeing food that's way more expensive. We're seeing rent and housing way more expensive. We're seeing college graduates graduate, and this is the first time we're seeing college graduates graduate and not having the opportunity to have jobs, not having the opportunity to own homes. And so I think we're seeing people who are electing and voting people in office who are needing and wanting to respond to that right now. And so we're in a moment where we're asking our government to intervene. We're in a great society moment in time. And so we also seen our federal government say and do things I don't think any of us thought was even possible, right? Write legislation, control big parts of our government, employ parts of our National Guard, create a police force through ICE and immigrant enforcement. And so is there opportunities at the local level for us to ask our municipal and city governments to do the same? And in New York, I think we've seen a mayor do some things at the city level. And I think that's the type of things that we see in New York.
Well, to bring it back to King, yes, there's so much of the world that's different, but as you're talking about some of the ways we've seen the National Guard employed or deployed, and we've seen the protests, that is akin to, of course, the King's time. Not much discussion happens around his economic policy and his push for guaranteed income and his push not necessarily for welfare, but an economic means that gives people a lift. That's exactly what's being talked about right now.
And that's what, when we talk about this democratic socialism, that's the type of candidates that are being elected. In New York, one of the things that they're talking about is a $30 minimum wage, and saying that out loud, you say, "Oh, $30 minimum wage, that's $60,000 a year salary." $60,000 a year is not an astronomical amount of money. The average cost of a Boston apartment is almost $3,000 a month. Making $60,000 a year, you cannot afford that apartment. You barely can afford the cost of a Zone 1 T-Pass to get to and from work. With $60,000 a year. And so the type of universal basic income, rental support, the type of subsidies for locally owned grocery stores that they're doing and talking about in New York, the type of subsidies like a free bus program. And we piloted those in Boston. There's several buses, the 23, the 19, the 11. Some of the buses, no one who is making lots of money rides the bus, right? And so, and in some countries, public transportation is in fact free, right? And so, there are ways that cities and municipalities can provide supports to working class families, and that's what people are voting for with their feet and with their ballots.
Well, where do these long-standing Democratic incumbents stand right now? People who, many of whom have been faithfully serving their country, faithfully serving their constituents, but also haven't been fresh and haven't had to make a name for themselves and haven't ridden the bus in a long time, finding themselves up against these challengers.
Yeah, man, I was watching House of the Dragons, and I want to, spoiler alert. There's on this Sunday's episode, the sea snake asked Rhaenyra for a favor that the sea snake is due. And if you know the show, the sea snake is the guy with the blonde dreads. whose wife died. He's the runs the seas. He has all the ships. Almost all his family members died, and he's lost his castle and his wealth. And he asks her for a favor, and she says, "Oh, I'm not sure this is the right time. We're in good standing, but I'm not sure this is the right time." And when I watched that episode, I was thinking, like, this feels like what happens with the Democratic Party. I think Democrats believe in a stance. They believe in following a moral compass, but sometimes when it comes to ultimately do the right thing, I think different things are at play, and they don't quite get over the hump. And I think for some of the folks who have been in the rank and file, they might have to make some hard decisions around playing the game and making the right decisions for their constituencies. And I think in New York, for some of those Democratic candidates, they were in a choice, and I think voters made the decisions for them.
Well, it's interesting to also make the comparison with King, who created a narrative that many people understood and that certainly survived through generations, that there is a narrative that's taking shape right now, in part crafted by the new mayor of New York. And does this carry? Does this bring people on board, and does this carry into the primaries where you see a lot of people endorsed by the president? He's not winning every primary, his endorsed candidates, but he is winning some.
He is winning some, and the bottom line is, we are all human beings, and this campaign of division, this zero-sum thinking that puts people against each other. Some people with more means, some people who are working class, some people who are have less wealth against each other is part of the challenge in America. There is enough means in this country for all of us. And when there are propaganda, when there is regulation, when there is fake news that puts us at odds against each other, we start deteriorating the thing that makes the public and the American dream not possible for all of us. And putting rich people or people with means against people who don't have means, putting immigrants against citizens, putting emerging students and workers against people who are established is part of the challenge of today. And so that is the thing that is in front of us. That is the bridge that we have to cross. And so I just want to be clear about that. And, we don't have to be enemies with each other because we disagree. And people who have more means are not our enemy, but we do need to work together and create opportunities for all of us to thrive in this world. And, the challenge of tomorrow is to ensure, or the next 250 years is to ensure that we make a world and a society where all of us can thrive, because we can't thrive if only some of us make it. Our destinies are tied to one another. And that is fundamentally what King was trying to preach, this garment of destiny, the fact that our destiny and our futures are tied to one another.
Well, Imari Paris Jeffries, always great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It was great to see you. It's always great to see one another out in the wild, too, not just here in the studio.
It was fantastic to see you, man. And we got a lot of work to do. And I think the spirit of the World Cup, the spirit of the semi-quincentennial has reminded Bostonians that we can do it here. We are small enough to make it happen. We are smart enough to make it happen. And we have the history of the revolution and the spirit of teamwork, camaraderie to make it happen. And when Boston succeeds, the country follows. And so I am optimistic about the next 5 to 10 years, let alone the next 250 years.
Yeah, I think too many people have forgotten who we are and who we have been.
That's right.
Whether it's 250 plus years ago or a couple of years ago. Imari Paris Jeffries, thank you as always. Great to see you.
Great seeing you.
Imari Paris Jeffries is president and CEO of Embrace Boston and one of the co-chairs of Everyone 250. He joins us every month. Coming up, the hip-hop collective Cure for Paranoia is this year's Tiny Desk contest winner, which means it gets to take its show on the road. Frontman Cameron McCloud joins us. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Coming up tomorrow.
Mayor Wu, nice to see you.
Great to see you both.
Boston Mayor Michelle Wu takes your questions.
We have a text from Elizabeth in West Roxbury.
David in Savin Hill, you're first with Mayor Wu. Welcome.
Anne in Jamaica Plain, thank you for calling.
Boston Public Radio's Ask the Mayor.
We know what we need to do. We have analyzed, we have budgeted, and this is about taking those actions to reach our actual goals. And so from planning, envisioning to implementation.
Live at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, only on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Gloucester Stage, presenting Betrayal by Harold Pinter. When two lovers meet for the last time, their affair unfolds backwards into a near-decade-long illicit love triangle. Starts Thursday, July 9th. Tickets available at gloucesterstage.com. And Morningside Music Bridge, returning to Boston. The summer program shines a spotlight on young classical musicians from around the world, with concerts July 12th through August 7th at New England Conservatory. mmb.international. And Standish Village in Dorchester's Lower Mills, providing assisted living residents with programs designed to help seniors stay sharp, social, and independent. Learn more at standishvillage.com/programs.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. The band Cure for Paranoia is a Dallas hip-hop collective known for mixing rap with funk, soul, and rock. But as the name of the band suggests, it also sees and uses music as a therapeutic tool, especially to address mental health issues, with a hefty dose of humor mixed in. Long part of the Dallas music scene, Cure for Paranoia is now reaching a much bigger audience by way of something famously small, NPR's Tiny Desk contest, which they won this year with a track titled No Brainer. Cure for Paranoia is here for the Tiny Desk contest on the road tour, which brings the band to the St. Clair in Cambridge. They're performing tonight at 8. Joining us to talk about it all is Cameron McCloud, the band's frontman, rapper, and songwriter. Welcome to the Culture Show. Congratulations on being the contest winner.
Ooh, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
This is something that you were chasing. You've been very open about this. We saw your previous submissions. You've been chasing for years.
Yeah. Kind of like a big lesson in manifesting, you know, because I've always been saying, like, on stages, like, it's not a matter of if this happens, it's a matter of when. You know what I mean? And I'm just very grateful that I didn't get the things that I wanted when I wanted them, because I think I wasn't ready then. And I don't know, I feel more than ready right now.
What makes you ready now?
I think it's the love that I have for myself now and the acceptance of myself. And over the course of these years of doing these submissions, like, it's been... I think I have a newfound trust in myself too, and my capabilities, and what I have to say.
Well, I think it's a good time to ask about Cure for Paranoia as a title for your band. Mm-hmm. What does this reveal about what it reveals about you?
What it reveals about me is I'm crazy. No, not really. I'm just kidding. I mean, I am, but it is based off of like a a diagnosis that I got about a decade ago. I was placed on medication for bipolar depression and paranoid schizophrenia, and shortly after realized that like music was more therapeutic than the meds were for me. Everyone take your medication. That's not me saying don't take your meds, because I do take my meds still. But also it's just like I found a way to kind of put a voice to the voices in a sense. And it was just a good way for me to kind of express how I was feeling.
How does that work? This is something that comes up so often on this show, the place of music in the brain, especially with neurology.
Yeah.
How have you recognized that part of it is such a great therapy for you to create music, to express through music, and how that ultimately helps?
I think that we don't really give enough credit to the power of frequency and the fact that we are really just vibrations, and what you ingest really has a lot to say about who you are as a person, the same way that what you put out there says a lot about what you are as a person. So I think that again, like manifesting an affirmation in this music has been me really just like kind of hypnotizing myself into accepting myself with the things that I say and the things I put out.
I want to go to another piece of your music where we see this addressed to. Here's a little bit from the song The Art Show from Cure for Paranoia's latest EP, Work of Art.
Walking to the gallery like I'm the captain. Now they wanna track me down. I earn my sweats, I got my captain down. I used to think about what people thought about me all the time. Now I walk into the gallery like all of this is mine. I'm unapologetic, be myself, I won't apologize. Jason saying sorry for a sorry, didn't change my life. I had a million things I changed by myself. Now I can't even find one. Too many people know I'm 3 steps ahead. I can just my chest, I'm close up. I'm not in bed, but I'm so locked in. No intermission.
That is very confessional there.
Oh, yeah.
And how much of that comes through the performance as well, being on stage in front of people, especially being doing the Tiny Desk concert in front of so many? Is it millions? It's got to be millions.
At this point. I think, I really think that the same way that it's my therapy, when I'm writing these words and when I'm writing these songs, I write them as if I'm already, as if I'm performing them on stage. So it's just all the stuff that every insecurity that I've had, every disdain I've had for myself or whatever, it's just like I'm really getting to vocalize it and put it on Front Street, and not only just for me but also for it says in the song, like, I really used to hate myself, so the song's for people who need it, because I'm not the only one that needs a cure for paranoia. My God, today, especially right now with everything going on,
Well, how did it begin to change? How did the disdain start to dissipate?
I think whenever I stopped trying to get other people to like me and started focusing on liking myself, that's whenever like the disdain changed, because it was like, if your metric system for happiness is to get everyone else to like you, that's not a controllable variable. I can't control what you think of me. I can't control what other people think of me, but the controllable variable that there is what I think of myself. So yeah, I'm just my biggest cheerleader now.
I'm speaking with Cameron McCloud, the frontman of the Dallas hip-hop collective Cure for Paranoia. They are the winners of this year's NPR Tiny Desk contest, and they'll be at the Sinclair in Cambridge tonight at 8. Tell me about your group. We've seen them on the Tiny Desk concert series, and that's a whole energy in and of itself.
Yeah, it's literally family. Like my producer's wife is one of the background singers, and my producer's wife's brother, the brothers, are on keys and bass, and the keys is the MD of everything, and we've all been playing together for more than 10 years at this point.
And I should point out for people, you're talking about 14 or 15 people. How does a group that large stay together that long?
That's such a good question. I don't know how. I really don't. I think it's just I really do think the family aspect of it has a lot to do with it. You choose your family and you pick your family, and I think the same way that we've all individually mastered our crafts and learned our individual instruments, we've also learned each other and learned each other's like different idiosyncrasies. And that's why like whenever you see us play on stage live together, you see that synergy, you see that you see that family aspect.
And with family comes a lot of family humor. We know what happens when you sit down at the table together, and you bring a lot of humor, especially in the exchanges between songs in your concerts. Is that deliberate, the humor?
I think that has always been my favorite part of the show. And I don't even necessarily mean just like my show. That's always been my favorite part of any show. That's the part where you get to really learn about the artist and really get to know the artist and feel like you're like kind of like talking to them on a one-on-one basis. Like I say all the time, my biggest inspiration is Lauryn Hill, because she has a project called Unplugged 2.0 where it's just literally her and a guitar, and there's just as many interludes as there are songs, and it's just her talking. And I think that my it took a long time, but I think that my banter has always been more important to me than the music, because I know I'm a killer musician. But as far as like being a like conversationalist, that's really where I want to thrive at.
Well, speaking of manifesting, you're connected to Lauryn Hill now, right?
No, but come on, manifest.
Well, haven't you had communication with her?
I think who you're thinking about is Erykah Badu. I have talked to Lauryn Hill before once. I like snuck backstage at her show, similar to how I snuck backstage and talked to Erykah. But literally, like, she was in her truck about to leave, and her security was trying to be like, no, like, don't, and she told them to let me through. And I literally like reached my hand into the car, and she like held my hand the whole time while we talked about like voices and talked about dealings with the industry and and just appreciation for self. I think that's one of like I've got to meet all of my heroes up to this point, but I do put that up there with like one of the pivotal conversations in my career. Yeah.
You've also embarked on a project where you wrote a verse or a rap for every day for an entire year.
Yeah.
When you embarked on that, what was it about for you?
It was about not being a broke rapper in Trump's America, especially in Texas too. It was about that first and foremost, because it was like, if no one's coming to save you. And
let me just stop you and ask you what it means to be a broke rapper in Texas.
I think, especially in the way that the world is right now, I think I mainly say that to say, like, I didn't want my fate to be in anybody else's hands. I didn't want my lifestyle to be in the hands of a 9-to-5 or of a check coming bi-weekly. You know what I mean? I had... I had and have a level of success that I want to attain, and a level of comfortability that I want to attain. I'm in a point in my life where I don't have to be anywhere I don't want to be, and I don't want to lose that. That was kind of like the main thing. When I even first started rapping, the whole point that I told myself, I was like, you're either going to be homeless or you're going to be a musician. There is no in between. You know what I mean? So it's like, I really don't want to be homeless. and I also really want to be a musician, and I want to only do that. I think music is the catalyst for me becoming the best version of myself that I can possibly be.
Well, in terms of what you were putting out every single day and being the best version of what you want to be, creativity doesn't necessarily come polished every day. So what would you put out?
And that's the thing that you said. The thing, it's like every day isn't going to be your best, but that doesn't mean that you don't show up for yourself every day. I wouldn't even be sitting here talking to you had I not showed up for myself every single day. It's even the same as like going to the gym. You're not going to get your best workout every day, but you are going to thank yourself for going to the gym that day. You know what I mean? So I think that's why I was able to really commit to rapping and posting every single day, because it was never about the likes. It was about bettering myself. You don't go work out so that people clap for you. You go to work out so that you look and feel better.
But some people do.
And I mean, those people end up not going to the gym all the time. You know what I mean?
When you look back now at what you did over the course of those 365 days, what do you recognize in who you were as an artist and what the evolution was over that time?
I feel like genuinely, like anyone under the sound of my voice right now could literally go to my Instagram right now and go look back a year ago. I'm not even the same person. I've literally not even the same person. I've gained, I mean, if we want to even talk about physically, I've gained like 50 pounds since then. I was like, I don't know. It's just so weird to see like even the physical manifestation as well, of like showing up. So it's physically, and also just like, I really, 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 I believed in myself. I did. And I believed that I could do this, but it's like, now I know I can do anything. You know what I mean?
Well, what happened when you put it out? What was the response that you received? And again, as you, by your own admission, it's not about the response, but it's about the tenor of the response.
I think I do think that like the following and the the likes and comments of it all, that is like a good barometer for getting yourself out there. But I do also think that it was because I was stepping more into myself, and I was becoming a more sure of myself version, that's the reason why people were showing up. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You've talked about this very publicly, that you lost your mom during this process, which could undo anybody. How did you get through that and still continue?
It's interesting because today's the year anniversary of when I lost her too, and I'm gonna have to like go perform. I think that I say all the time that I know that it would make her so sad if that was the reason why I stopped, because she's been my biggest champion. She used to tell me all the time, she's like, I'm so glad you didn't listen to me, because like my dad's still trying to be a rapper to this day. Like we're not in each other's lives like that. Like we talk on the phone every once in a while, but like she just really, the moment she saw that this is what I wanted to do, I know it terrified her, because she's seen that it's kind of a 1 in a million thing to really, really be successful, and she just wanted the best life for me.
So she told you to not necessarily pursue it because she wanted the best life.
At first she was like, yeah, this isn't realistic. This isn't like, you need to actually go to school, you need to actually get a job, and you need to blah, 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 blah. But yeah, and then she saw that I really stuck with it and really made it work. And even when she was in the hospital and I was there with her, she kept being like, did you do your verse? Make sure you go do your verse today. You said you're going to do it every day, so you need to do it. So literally I just treat every day like those days last year. Every day you have to do something to better yourself today.
Well, how has it been for you to be out on tour? You're out in a number of cities. You've been doing this for about a month now. You just mentioned as you were coming into the studio, this is your first time in Boston.
Ever.
What's this experience like to go to all of these different cities, find the different audiences, and find how your work is landing with them?
I think, again, I'm just going to use this word again. This will just be the word for the day, but like manifesting. I've wanted to be able to see the world with music as well. You know what I mean? Not only did I want to not have to go to work, but I love to travel. So it's been beautiful to be in these different cities, and it's one thing to have like the likes and comments come in on Instagram, but to actually have people showing up to these shows to see me and to like tell me how much they appreciate like what I've done and what I've persevered through, and getting to hear other people's grieving stories and how like I've inspired them to keep going through their grief and things like that. And it's just like, yeah, it's so bittersweet too at the same time, because it's like I know my mom would be like, like I'm the most successful that I've ever been, and I just want to like call my mom and talk about it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, even though she's not here physically, she's more here than she was when she was here, and I feel her in like the love that I get from these shows. I feel her in the love that I get from these different interactions. I feel her in the love from the different moms that come up to me at shows, and they're like, my son brought me here, and like, yeah, she's everywhere.
which is wonderful to hear, and I'm sure I do believe that she'll be with you tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, especially the way you talk about it.
Yeah.
Congratulations, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, man.
Cameron McCloud is the frontman of the Dallas hip-hop collective Cure for Paranoia, winner of this year's NPR Tiny Desk contest. The band brings the Tiny Desk contest on the road tour to the Sinclair in Cambridge tonight at 8. Thank you again.
Yeah, of course.
Coming up, Jeffrey Seller is the powerhouse Broadway producer who brought Rent, Avenue Q, and Hamilton to the stage. Now in his memoir, Theater Kid, he raises the curtain on the life that led him there and backstage tales. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
Indigenous communities in Alberta, Canada don't trust their water anymore. They say it's tainted with toxic waste generated by nearby oil extraction, and they are demanding better.
I understand that we need oil, but to do it just for the sake of the dollar and never mind whose lives are at stake, that's like murder.
A community takes on big oil next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Peabody Essex Museum, Salem's destination for authentic Witch City lore and witch trials history since 1799. Ticket information and more at PEM.org.
Our funding comes from our listeners and Subaru of New England.
Underwriting WGBH is great for my company, and I would say for almost any company.
Ernie Bach Jr., owner.
And if you talk to the people that are underwriting, they will agree it's great for both parties. We're very proud to be associated with WGBH.
To learn how a partnership with WGBH can benefit your business, visit wgbh.org/sponsorship.
Listen to GBH 89.7. Read GBH Daily. Watch the Boston Public Radio live stream. However you get your news, find it on the GBH News app. Download it today on the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. If you know the sound of contemporary Broadway, then you know Jeffrey Seller's work.
525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,000.
Seller is the producer who, in the wobbly, nascent stages of the musicals Rent, Avenue Q, and In the Heights, saw Broadway or even blockbuster potential in those shows, despite the fact that they were shows with untested narratives, profane puppets, or wildly unconventional music. Then there was Lin-Manuel Miranda's Heights, follow-up Hamilton, the rare show that became not just a Broadway phenomenon, but a cultural landmark. Now Seller is sharing his story in his memoir, Theater Kid, the drama of growing up adopted, gay, and in a home with many a domestic divide, and how theater became a place of escape to the rooms where some of the most significant musicals of the last generation happened. And the next chapter is already underway. Seller is back in collaboration with Lin-Manuel Miranda on Warriors, a new musical headed to Broadway in 2027. Jeffrey Seller, welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Jared, thank you for that nice introduction. I think the first two words that I really took to heart were wobbly and nascent.
Well, you know, we expect to read a book like this and lightning strikes and you identify it immediately, but that was not the case, and I appreciated your candor, especially for Rent. You call it numb when you first heard it. It was good, but then numb.
Yes. back in the days that we were developing Rent, I was 29 and 30 years old. And when people say, how did you get to produce it? I would say, well, nobody else would take it on because no one else on Broadway at that time believed in a young composer, lyricist, storyteller named Jonathan Larson, who wanted to write the rock musicals that no one else wanted to produce. In many ways, Broadway was moribund during that period in which there were very few American musicals being produced, and Broadway was being held up by the blockbusters, Les Mis, Phantom, and Cats from London. And indeed, Jonathan's show took many years of struggle and rewriting and rethinking to find the pure form that ultimately it became. And what is so astonishing to me today is that we're at the 30th anniversary of Rent on Broadway this year, 2026.
And it still resonates with people, just as you saw something that while you recognized it may take years because you pushed and prodded to get it to where it should be. How do you describe, because that was also your first Broadway show, you point out that you're going to this premiere, and 3 years prior to that, you couldn't even afford to go to the theater on Broadway. How would you describe your aptitude for your ability to listen and understand that there is something there?
I don't think that it's about a skill. I think it's about an innate feeling. And so I don't give myself that much credit because I respond to the hair on my arms. I respond to how music affects me physically. And if that music is giving me the goosebumps, making the hair on my arm stand up, making me cry, then I know it's for me. And that's what I follow. So though in many of its early stages, the story may not yet have worked for Rent, the characters may not have been fully formed, but it was the music that made me say, this is worth fighting for. And that's always what has led me in my career on Broadway, which is that I want my ears to be pricked in a whole new way.
To stay with Rent for a moment, many people know the story that's associated with that Jonathan Larson died just as the show was opening in previews. You were among the first people to learn that he had died. When you heard that news, how did you get through it? You write about this loss with such a visceral sense in the book.
Yes. It's still painful to talk about 30 years later. And so many young people who love Rent don't know this story, but tragically, Jonathan died of an aortic aneurysm, an explosion of the heart, 3 hours after the final dress rehearsal on January 25th, 1996. He had been complaining of chest pain and stomach pain, and 2 different hospitals sent him away saying it was the flu or maybe food poisoning. And it was so painful and tragic and ironic that this young composer lyricist who was writing a show about living with and not dying from disease, who was writing a show about young people trying to live with AIDS, survive AIDS. Some were surviving AIDS, some were not. Was writing songs like One Song Glory, One Song Before I Go, which is, of course, the first song sung by Roger at the beginning of the song, a young singer-songwriter who has HIV, and who writes, living and dying in America in the 90s, right? We're living in America at the end of the millennium. And it was unbelievable. Like, what? Because Jonathan didn't have HIV, and 35-year-old men don't have aortic aneurysms 3 hours after the final dress rehearsal of the show they've been working on for 6 years. It was unbelievable and gut-wrenching, and I knew right then and there this was now a legend in the making. I knew right then and there that he was going to become a mythic figure with this show called Rent.
How would you describe how that changed Broadway from that point on?
I say that there is no Avenue Q without Rent. There is no Next to Normal or Dear Evan Hansen without Rent. There is, here's what happens at Rent. It blows open the doors for risk on Broadway, not just rock musicals, but musicals that are small, musicals that are about offbeat subjects, musicals that are contemporary and that are about how we live today. And we had not seen that on Broadway in 20 years. We hadn't really seen it since A Chorus Line, a musical that has our musical vernacular with people we might know on that stage, singing about their daily lives. And there was a high school senior at Hunter High School in New York, and he takes his girlfriend to see Rent, and they can afford the $35 tickets in the balcony. And he looks down at that stage, and he says, "Oh, I can write a musical about my neighborhood with our music and our characters." And who is that man? Lin-Manuel Miranda. And what musical does he write inspired by Rent? In the Heights. So In the Heights is sitting on Rent's shoulders. So there is no In the Heights, and then there's no Hamilton. So what I say is that when you look across Broadway and you see all of the contemporary musicals, all the musicals that use some iteration of contemporary music, all of them are sitting on Jonathan's shoulders, which means Jonathan achieved exactly what he set out to do, was to create music and stories with characters of our time for what he called our generation.
First of all, for people just tuning in, I'm speaking with Jeffrey Seller, the Tony Award-winning Broadway producer behind Rent, Avenue Q, In the Heights, and Hamilton. His new memoir is Theater Kid. I'm reading your book, and you're talking about the paucity of musical theater as you're coming on the scene. At the same time that we're looking at fewer musicals opening on Broadway right now, there's this tremendous arc that we've seen, this explosion of all the stories and the points of view that you just discussed. How do you see Broadway right now?
Broadway right now is suffering in some regards. Musical theater is suffering. Like getting stars to be in revivals of plays on Broadway is not suffering. That's doing fine. But new musicals are suffering. And they're not always suffering. And I want to say, if you could just look at the era right after Hamilton, the year after Hamilton, 5 good new musicals opened on Broadway, one of which was Come From Away, one of which was Dear Evan Hansen, one of which was Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet. And they were all good musicals. And there were many years after where we had many good musicals on Broadway. And over the last couple of years, we've had a real slowdown in the number of fine new musicals that have reached Broadway. And Broadway is dependent on getting what I call a mega hit every few years, like every 3 or 4 years. So the last mega hit before Hamilton was Book of Mormon. And those mega hits raise all the boats because they bring so much attention to Broadway and enthusiasm to Broadway that it helps to sell tickets for all of the musicals. And if you think about it, we usually have 3 every decade. And in the decade of Book of Mormon and Hamilton, we had 2. And then we haven't had 1 since Hamilton. Now, is that because of COVID? Is that because of the inflationary pressures that have affected us post-COVID? Is that because young authors just haven't done it yet? I don't know exactly why, but it hasn't stopped me from trying. And, that's what leads me to the enthusiasm I bring when Lynn, with his collaborator Issa Davis, brings their new musical Warriors to Broadway next spring.
Well, I was going to wait till the end to ask you because I have more to ask you about yourself, but I will ask about that now then. Warriors, what can you tell people in these nascent stages about what you've seen and heard?
People can learn a lot about it. There's a lot about it online, and Lynn and Issa made a concept album 3 years ago about Warriors, so people could go listen to it anytime they want on Spotify or YouTube or wherever they listen to their music. But it's based on a 1979 movie about all the gangs of New York City going up to Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx with the goal of signing a truce, a peace treaty. And it goes wildly wrong when the head of all of the gangs is assassinated, and this small gang from Coney Island called the Warriors is wrongly accused of that assassination. And how the Warriors get safely home from Van Cortlandt Park, where all the other gangs are chasing them, all the way down to Coney Island, is the fierce action of this musical that only takes place on one summer night in New York City. And it's a runaway train, I'll tell you that much. But to go back to your question, what does Broadway need when it ails? A great musical. And I'm just trying to make one.
So can you tell me, do you have a sense, you're talking to me in the summer of 2026, that you have a hit on your hands for the spring of 2027?
I could never tell you that. What I could tell you is it's good. I know enough at this point in my life. I can tell you it's good. And I can tell you that there will be some kind of an audience for it. Here's what I cannot tell you. I can't tell you how deep it will go, how wide it will go. Will it become the kind of show that people love and it lasts for 1 year? Or it will become the kind of show that people love and it lasts for 3 years or 10 years? That's the part we have no idea. All I know is we can make a show, we make it good, and then we see how does it mix with our cultural moment, our emotional moment, our socio-political economic moment. There's this one other element that comes into play when you create a new work of art, which is how does it mix with the world it's entering?
And of course, who knows what that is going to be? Well, I want to go back and ask one question about yourself because we just have about a minute or so, a couple minutes left. I love this line. You're talking about your very early days working for the Weislers, another very famous husband and wife producing team.
The folks who made Chicago,
right?
The revival of Chicago.
And here you know very, very little. I get a knot in my stomach just reading about you being in that office. I think we can all identify with the pressures put on us knowing nothing and we have to fake it till we make it. But she asks you, has anyone told you you're too aggressive? Because you're at that early age giving Tommy Tune notes. Where did that confidence come from?
I started to analyze new plays when I was a junior in college. And I'd been listening to every single show album since middle school. And where does confidence like that come from? I guess it comes from our guts. And I have guts. And you're asking such a great question because here I was, this, poor, gay, skinny, not that masculine kid from Oak Park, from the suburbs of Detroit who couldn't play baseball. But you know what? When it came to storytelling, I felt like I know what I'm talking about. And I had nothing to lose.
Well, there are so many stories like this throughout the book. We barely scratched the surface. Maybe we'll have to have you back on if you're willing, because there is so much more to talk about with all the other shows and all of the other brazen things you did. Jeffrey Seller, thank you so much for being with us today.
Jared, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and I wish you a great summer.
All right, thank you. You too. Jeffrey Seller is the Tony Award-winning Broadway producer behind Rent, Avenue Q in the Heights in Hamilton. His memoir is Theater Kid, and his latest collaboration with Lin-Manuel Miranda, Warriors, begins previews on Broadway in March of 2027. Again, thank you. And tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library for Harvard professor Danielle Allen on her new book, Radical Duke, How One Aristocrat and the American Revolution Transformed Britain. Plus, comedian Fendi Fried Chicken cooks up some laughs for us. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.